Chapter 1889. The second reason was because of the death just now. That was because Fantasy Fiend was a game with a high degree of realism. The degree of realism was quite high, including his own death. Although it could reduce all kinds of feelings by 50%, the male player really felt the feeling of death just now. He could feel that his head was hit by something heavy, and then all the blood in his body seemed to have gathered at the top of his head. A huge sense of dizziness and loss of strength came along with it. After that, he didn't know anything. This kind of feeling, if it was anyone else who experienced it, would not feel very good. At this moment, he looked at Gu Xingyin as if he couldn't wait to kill her. In fact, Gu Xingyin didn't plan to let him go. It wasn't just him. She didn't plan to let any of the 13 men go. Ever since the end of the last world, she had been holding back a mouthful of anger in her heart that she couldn't vent. These people just happened to come to her door for her to vent her anger. How could she let down their good intentions? She slowly sighed and said, as expected of Harris's staff. It feels good to beat people up with it. Not far away, the burly man who was scratching his feet laughed out loud. She now understood that dark fragrance flowing sleeves was purposely angering that group of people. Although she didn't know what she was relying on, based on her previous performance, she shouldn't be at a disadvantage. Not scratching his feet thought about it and quietly pressed the record button on the bottom right corner of his personal virtual panel. As soon as Gu Xingyin finished speaking, he was not surprised to see the man raising his sword and rushing towards him again. Anyway, the two of them each had a chance to PK, and once it started, they couldn't give up. If they didn't PK, they would automatically admit defeat. At that time, the result would be the same as a PK failure. The other party could even directly choose a piece of equipment from you. This was much worse than a random drop. Everyone had countless items in their backpacks. If it was random, they might drop something worthless like the night luminescent pearl just now. However, the opponent's choice wasn't the same. No one was an idiot. Even if they didn't know anything, they could just point at the other party's equipment and take it. Anyway, if it was worn by the player, it wouldn't be bad. Gu Xingyin was waiting for the other party to make a move. She waved the staff in her hand and attacked the male player with a beautiful posture. The two sides were actually entangled in a fight. Fuck. One of the players who were attacking Gu Xingyin suddenly shouted. He stared dumbfoundedly at Gu Xingyin, who was nimble and agile in mid-air, suppressing her opponent with a single staff, and shouted, "What kind of skill is this? Do mages have such skills?" He wanted to spit out a mouthful of blood. A mage's attack was even sharper than a swordsman's. How could they continue playing? Another person shook his head. How is that possible? Mages are support types. It's impossible for them to have so many attack skills, but the two of them looked at each other and saw the deep shock in each other's eyes. If this wasn't a sorcerer's skill, then how did Dark Fragrance do it? A terrifying thought appeared in everyone's mind. While the two of them were chatting, Gu Xingyin had already discovered the male player's weakness. She chuckled and waved the staff in her hand. Chapter 1890. Hack, smash, swing, sweep. Everyone could clearly see that a string of red damage continuously appeared on the male player's body. Occasionally, a critical hit would appear. Many people had already turned their heads away. It was really too tragic. By the time Gu Xingyin's figure descended from the sky and ruthlessly smashed the male player onto the ground with her staff, the male player was already dead. Ignoring the corpse on the ground, Gu Xingyin happily picked up the dropped item on the ground. Purple quality necklace, attribute, +5 agility, +3 accuracy. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. This was not bad. She was in a good mood and immediately put it on. Then she turned her head and looked at the ground. Why are you pretending to be dead? I can't PK with you today, she said in disdain. After such a long time, this player should have been able to revive long ago. Hearing her words, the male player's body flashed with white light and he crawled up from the ground. You. He looked at Gu Xingyin with a complicated expression. He deeply felt that his heart had been hurt. With this kind of skill, she actually went to be a healer. Was there something wrong with this woman? If you have the ability to be so strong, why don't you have the ability to be a swordsman? If you don't want to be a swordsman, you can be an archer or an assassin. Why are you trying to cheat my feelings? Although he didn't say anything, his expression said everything. Gu Xingyin yawned and moved the staff in her hand. A golden light fell, giving herself a 10-minute agility buff and 2 points of stamina. She lazily said, "So tired. Luckily, I'm a mage." Everyone, damn shameless. Are you tired? We saw how easily you crushed your opponent. Then, they all saw the cold mage turn around and look at them. She smiled sinisterly and said, "Who's next?" Everyone. Mom, I'm scared. After seeing the PK between Dark Fragrance and the male player, the rest of the people could already see their own fate. They were probably going to die. They said they were afraid, but they had to do it. Otherwise, with Hidden Fragrance Full Sleeve's personality and the enmity between them, if they let Hidden Fragrance Full Sleeve speak, they would definitely be skinned alive. An archer walked up, unafraid of death. "Come, Hidden Fragrance Sleeves. You're good at close combat, but how about ranged attacks? How about long-range attacks?" Gu Xingyin quickly used facts to tell him that she didn't need to attack from afar. The archer was about to go crazy. When he was watching the fight, he didn't feel it at all. But when he actually fought, he realized just how difficult it was to deal with Hidden Fragrance. She was simply like a lingering spirit that refused to disperse, following him like a shadow and unable to be shaken off. It was another round of crushing power. Stepping on the archer, Gu Xingyin didn't even bat an eyelid, the second one. Everyone, the toe-scratching man looked at Gu Xingyin with shining eyes and said excitedly, "Oh my god, you're so handsome. Damn, this is the first time I've seen a healer play like this. From today onwards, Hidden Fragrance Full Sleeve is my idol, no, my goddess." Qi Li also looked at Gu Xingyin with shining eyes. He felt the blood in his body begin to boil. This long-awaited feeling of meeting his match made him excited. He stared at Hidden Fragrance Full Sleeve without blinking, his eyes emitting a wolf-like light. Chapter 1891. Qi Li and Don't Scratch Their Feet were originally prepared. If those people went too far, they would show up and help Hidden Fragrance. But at this moment, they realized that they were unnecessary. However, it wasn't like they didn't gain anything. Don't Scratch Their Feet was exclaiming and praising while Qi Li calmly watched the slender mage crush her opponent. The light in his eyes showed that he wasn't calm at all. 13 people, 24 rounds of PK. It lasted for nearly 2 hours. In other words, including the time spent chatting and picking up the loot after the PK, Dark Fragrance Sleeve took 4 minutes to defeat an opponent. At the end, the group of players looked at Gu Xingyin as if they were looking at a monster. Didn't she get tired? Holographic online games weren't like those old games. Although the players were in a virtual world, they had to be highly focused. The quantum computer could only make a judgment. If it detected that the player's mental state was in a state of fatigue, it would automatically trigger a notification and force the player to log off within half an hour. Dark Star Sleeve, on the other hand, had fought 24 rounds of PK. In this kind of situation, any normal person would be mentally tired, right? But Dark Fragrance Sleeve's expression was very relaxed. She didn't show any signs of fatigue at all. Is he even human? These players' emotions were written all over their faces. Gu Xingyin didn't even need to think to know what they were thinking. She laughed softly, and the words that came out of her indifferent expression made the male players angry half to death. "Don't worry about me, I'll PK with you. It won't take much of my energy. Everyone, feel it yourself." Gu Xingyin didn't care what they were thinking. She raised her chin and pointed at the last assassin. "Hurry up, finish this quickly. I still have things to do." The player stood up with a constipated expression. He closed his eyes and said stiffly, "Just give me a quick death." Gu Xingyin, it was rare for her to meet such a straightforward person. When the man saw that Gu Xingyin didn't make a move, he was dissatisfied. I say, hidden fragrance flowing sleeves, I know I'm not your opponent, but I don't want to appreciate your ability to crush me. Even if I'm blind today, I'll admit it. Why don't you just do it for me? Let's end this quickly. I'm going to log off and take a nap. The player started to doubt his life. He needed a good night's sleep. Gu Xingyin nodded. Okay. She picked up her staff and swung it down at the player. I swear, the price of Harris's staff is going to increase again, Hobo murmured to himself. Motherfucker, my goddess is using the effects of a divine sword. Chili didn't say anything, but his expression showed that he probably thought the same thing. Everyone saw 2 bright red, critical hit, and -9,999 appear above the player's head. The player closed his eyes in satisfaction. Gu Xingyin happily bent down to pick up the things on the ground. Then, she pouted. All right, another piece of trash dropped. The player immediately revived. He looked at Gu Xingyin with a complicated expression. Hidden fragrance flowing sleeves, can you tell me why your damage is so high? Gu Xingyin found the player pleasing to the eye. She tapped her finger and her stats window appeared in midair. Chapter 1892. There was no need to hide this. After all, Gu Xingyin knew that as long as someone paid attention to her battle, there would definitely be someone who could analyze it. That player looked at Gu Xingyin's stats and didn't say anything for a while. Everyone thought, fuck. This lunatic. Isn't she a lunatic? They had never seen such a fragile healer with such high critical damage. According to Dark Fragrance's current HP, a well-equipped swordsman could probably take half of her HP in one hit. If she was lucky enough to get a critical hit, it would probably leave her with critical HP. This thought made many people restless. Then, the cold reality woke them up. Damn it, after more than 20 matches, not a single player could touch Dark Fragrance's sleeves. If you wanted to leave her with critical HP, you had to be able to hit her first. While they were in a daze, Gu Xingyin had already collected all her loot. She lazily glanced at them and said, "You guys are still here. Do you want to spar with me again?" Spars didn't cause players to lose levels or equipment. However, the people who were already traumatized immediately reacted when they heard this. In less than a minute, the people in front of Gu Xingyin suddenly disappeared. Gu Xingyin straightened up and looked behind her. You too, you've been following me for so long and watching the show for so long. What's the matter? Toe-scratching Hunk stuck out his tongue. As expected, she had already discovered them. The two of them directly walked out. Seeing their IDs, Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. They were 2 big shots. Needless to say, Chili was the mysterious number 1 on the PK leaderboard. Toe-scratching Hunk was also one of the few female players on the PK leaderboard. As for Dark Fragrance Sleeve, she was a mage, so naturally, she wouldn't fight for the PK leaderboard. But after that, Gu Xingyin laughed in her heart. That might not be the case. Seeing that Gu Xingyin didn't say anything, Toe-scratching Hunk walked to her side with a smile. Goddess. Ah, Dark Fragrance Sleeve. I'm your fan. Gu Xingyin looked at the little girl's bright smile and did not express much. Then, what do you want to do by following me? The smile on the buff man's face froze. The Almighty was just like the rumors. Although he wasn't cold, he was very cold. Chili, who was standing beside her, suddenly said, "We would like to invite you to join our fixed team." Gu Xingyin was surprised. God Chili's fixed team was quite famous in the entire Dragon Roar server. This was because the players inside were all famous players on the leaderboards. What was even rarer was that none of them had joined any guild. Countless guilds had tried to recruit them. If they could recruit this team into their own guild, it would be the equivalent of gaining 5 more peak experts. The combat power of the entire guild would rise by a large margin. Of course, the idea was beautiful. However, until now, not a single guild had succeeded. Gu Xingyin asked, "Why are you suddenly looking for me?" Before Chili could say anything, Toe-scratching Hunk quickly said, because you're very strong, God. She was such an outspoken girl. This was Gu Xingyin's evaluation of toe-scratching hunk. She thought for a moment. Dark Fragrance Sleeve was now considered a free player. That kind of big guild had many restrictions, so it was not convenient for her to fight alone. Thinking about it this way, Qi Li's fixed team was actually a very good choice. Chapter 1893. However, she raised her eyebrows and looked at the two of them with a faint smile. You think I'm good, so you invited me. But what benefits can you give me if I join your team? The toe-picking burly man, not picking feet, was stunned when he heard this. She had never encountered such a problem before. When other people heard that Master Qi Li had personally invited them, they basically didn't refuse. Who would think of bargaining? She opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Qi Li, who was standing on the side, suddenly said, if you join our team, you will be able to open new dungeons and clear secret realms immediately. You won't have to worry about teammates dragging you down. Most importantly, he looked at Gu Xingyin and a smile suddenly appeared on his cold face. I can guarantee that you will have the priority to choose the items dropped in any team dungeon. Don't Scratch Her Feet looked at her brother in disbelief. If she didn't see wrongly, her big brother just laughed, right? Laughed, right? And the priority to choose? In Qi Li's fixed dungeons, this right had always been enjoyed by Qi Li as the team leader. Because his strength was there, no one was unconvinced. How could he give this to Dark Fragrance so easily? Don't Scratch Her Feet knew that with her brother's wealth, he wouldn't care about such things. However, she still felt that it was strange for her brother to be so easy to talk to. Don't Scratch Her Feet's gossipy eyes kept sweeping over the two of them. Gu Xingyin was stunned. Of course, she knew how strong Qi Li's fixed team was. And in any dungeon or wild boss, the first group to eat crabs would always get the most items. To have the priority to choose in such a team, Gu Xingyin seemed to see countless federal coins flying towards her. She said straightforwardly, deal. Then, as soon as she turned around, she met the man's burning gaze. Gu Xingyin. What's the matter? Qi Li said calmly, do you want to have a spar? Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment and nodded. A trace of interest rose in her heart. She had a rough understanding of the players in this game, but the combat power of the top players was still unknown. It wasn't an easy opportunity to spar with a great god who was ranked number 1 on the PK list. The man didn't scratch his feet and tactfully retreated far away. Then, he clicked on the recording function. She also wanted to know how strong the limits of the goddess were. Gu Xingyin and Qi Li soon clashed. In just a short 2 minutes, the man had already rubbed his eyes several times. She felt that there might be something wrong with her eyes. She couldn't see the movements of those two people clearly. Yes, he couldn't see clearly. This wasn't a keyboard MMORPG, but a holographic game. With such fast movements, it meant that the players' skills aside, at the very least, their reflexes and brain speed had already reached this level. This was the first time she had seen a player who could fight her brother to such an extent in this game. There was no need to mention her brother's identity. What kind of person was this Dark Fragrance Flowing Sleeves in real life? The longer the two of them fought, the more surprised they became. Gu Xingyin was appreciative. She knew that the reason she could reach this level in the game was entirely because of the cheat. In real life, her physical fitness was still at the level of an ordinary person. But this Qi Li was obviously different from her. Chapter 1894. Gu Xingyin felt his bold and ruthless attacks. This kind of fighting style that did not hesitate and almost every move hit the vital points. Gu Xingyin thought that she probably had some idea of Qi Li's origin. He was definitely not an ordinary person. Little did she know, Gu Xingyin was surprised, but Qi Li's shock was 100 times more than hers. He could sense that the opponent's offensive moves were completely different from his. At first, he thought that Hidden Fragrance was a military person like him. But he quickly denied this guess. The moves taught by the military were not like this. Just like what he learned, all the moves had only one purpose, and that was to make the opponent submit. The only characteristic was that it was fast, ruthless, and accurate. But Hidden Fragrance was different. Compared to his own moves, her moves were obviously much more smooth and pleasing to the eye. If one ignored the difficulty of her moves approaching like a shadow, just looking at her skills would make people feel that it was a kind of enjoyment. The center of Qi Li's mind was spinning rapidly. Could it be that this Hidden Fragrance was a descendant of some ancient martial arts family? Only those mysterious ancient martial arts families of Wuxia still kept such an inheritance, right? The reason why he was so sure was because he could completely see that the moves used by Hidden Fragrance were completely different from the skills in this game. This was also a major feature of holographic online games. Players could use various game skills, but they did not necessarily need to rely on game skills. Therefore, experts had once pointed out that in the next few decades, the relationship between holographic online games and real life would be closer. This was because for a large number of people, their skills in real life would not be wasted in holographic online games. Instead, they would become their own unique trump cards. Qi Li suddenly felt a pain in the back of his heart. Hidden Fragrance's laughing voice sounded in his ears. It's not a good habit to be distracted in battle. Qi Li turned around and saw something pressed against his back. It was a small dagger. Although it did not look very eye-catching, Qi Li knew that if this dagger was directly inserted into his vital points, with Hidden Fragrance's extremely high probability of explosive damage, he might lose more than half of his HP in an instant. After all, assassins were also a fragile profession. He said casually, I lost. Gu Xingyin put away the dagger. She had a good impression of Qi Li. He was serious, and did not escape from reality. He was a responsible man. Not far away, the big guy who was not scratching his feet was already stunned. She looked at the video she had recorded and a thought flashed through her mind. I'm the only one who knows a huge secret. These two people were simply too fucking handsome. She ran toward the two of them. Goddess. I'll be honest with you. I've recorded the video of you fighting against the 13 people, as well as the video of you sparring with my brother just now. Can I upload them to the forum? Her eyes sparkled as she looked at Gu Xingyin expectantly. Qi Li also looked at Gu Xingyin. He didn't care, he just know. He know that Hidden want to be in the limelight. No, the world. Gu Xingyin made the decision almost without hesitation. Of course. As a person whose primary goal was to make money, she certainly did not reject fame. Not only did she want to be famous, but she also wanted to be famous. This way, more business would come to her door. Chapter 1895. Gu Xingyin looked at the time. It was getting late. She turned to the two and said, I have to turn in a quest first, then go offline to eat and rest. I'll come back online at around 8 p.m. Both Qi Li and Don't Scratch Their Feet nodded. Gu Xingyin clicked on a teleport scroll. The next moment, she turned into a white light and disappeared in front of the two. After Gu Xingyin left, Don't Scratch Their Feet looked at her brother excitedly. Brother, don't you think we've found a great master? Qi Li's lips curled up slightly. It was rare for him to agree with his sister. She's really good. Gu Xingyin returned to Golden Hall in the main city. Golden Hall was the place where players could accept quests. She walked in, found the quest she had accepted, and clicked on it twice. She had accepted this quest before. This time, she clicked on it again to inform the other party that she had completed the quest. The subtext was, you can take the money and come to get the item. Soon, a petite figure appeared in front of Gu Xingyin. It was a very petite female swordsman. Her ID was a fleeting dream. To be honest, few girls were willing to play the swordsman class. This was because the swordsman's appearance was slightly clumsy. It was not as agile as the archer, nor as holy as the mage. Male players could feel that the swordsman's appearance was domineering, but for female players, the swordsman's appearance could be said to be the ugliest in the entire fantasy. However, this girl who looked very delicate and sweet had chosen this profession. However, this had little to do with Gu Xingyin. She reached out and took out the evening primrose. The girl's eyes lit up when she saw the evening primrose. Without hesitation, she clicked on her virtual panel a few times. Gu Xingyin immediately received a message. A fleeting dream has transferred 10,000 crystal coins into your account. Gu Xingyin looked at the female swordsman called a fleeting dream, who could take out 10,000 crystal coins without batting an eyelid, and then connected it with the ID that was full of youthful Chinibu. She immediately gave her a position in her heart, a silly person with a lot of money. She turned in the mission and was ready to leave, but silly white sweet recognized her. Great hidden fragrance sleeves. A fleeting dream called out to her from behind. Gu Xingyin turned around and asked, "What's the matter?" A fleeting dream looked at the side profile of the woman in front of him and blushed. "I want to ask, if I still want the moon primrose, will you still accept my mission?" A fleeting dream had an extremely persistent pursuit of fashion. One stalk of moon primrose could only be used on one piece of fashion or equipment, so it was clearly not enough. She had sent out many missions in the past, but each time, people either couldn't find the moon primrose, or they only found it after 10 days or half a month. She had never met someone who was as fast as hidden fragrance sleeves. Thus, she once again placed her hopes on Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment and asked, "You still want the moon primrose?" A fleeting dream nodded. "I want to fuse all of my equipment." Gu Xingyin. Evil rich people. She directly said, "I still have 2 stocks here. If you want, I can sell them to you." A fleeting dream's eyes lit up when she heard this. She didn't even look and swiped her hands. "Your account has been transferred 20,000 crystal coins by a fleeting dream." Chapter 1896. Gu Xingyin, this kind of capricious rich person was really too annoying. But she liked it. Since fleeting dream was so straightforward, she didn't procrastinate and directly took out the remaining 2 stalks of moon primrose from her bag and traded them to her. Fleeting dream was obviously very happy. When Gu Xingyin was about to turn around and leave, she still shouted, "Great God, let's add each other as friends. If you find more moon primrose in the future, remember to send me a private message. I'm always lacking them." Gu Xingyin. Then, a very discordant voice came out. "Let me see who this is. Isn't this our great god Dark Fragrance? So, after leaving Iron Blood lofty aspirations, you're relying on quests to make a living?" Jiao Jiao's voice was soft, but her words were full of malice. Fleeting Dream's eyes widened, but Gu Xingyin's expression was normal. She looked at Stunning Enchanting, who was surrounded by several players, and faintly asked, "I'm relying on my own ability to make money. What does it have to do with you? Or is it because my self-reliant appearance makes you look like a trash who can only rely on men and hurt your fragile self-esteem?" Stunning Enchanting glared with her big eyes. "You. I'm very busy, I don't have much time to listen to your nonsense." Fleeting Dream laughed out loud and looked at Gu Xingyin with eyes full of worship. Too amazing, she clearly has an expressionless face and doesn't care about anything, but just a few words from her mouth can make you angry half to death. Stunning Enchanting fiercely glared at Fleeting Dream, then turned to Gu Xingyin and said, "I really don't know why you're so arrogant here. Dark Fragrance, you're just a pitiful mage who was kicked out of the guild by Iron Blood lofty aspirations. Do you know the consequences of offending me?" Gu Xingyin looked at her as if she was looking at an idiot and said with a sigh, "I also don't know why you feel so good about yourself. I don't know what will happen to me if I offend you, but I really think you might need to take some medicine." After she said this, her face suddenly turned cold. "A good dog doesn't block the way. If you don't like me, you can directly PK me. Otherwise, my time is very precious. I don't have time to argue with you." She had a lot of good stuff on her. Gu Xingyin secretly thought that if he could trick her into having a PK with him, unfortunately, Enchanting Beauty still had some intelligence. She knew that even though they were both mages, she might not be able to beat Dark Fragrance flowing sleeves. She looked at Gu Xingyin, who was standing there perfectly fine. She thought that the person she had hired had not made a move yet, so she persuaded herself to swallow her anger. She told herself, what's the point of arguing with her now? He had ruined his image in front of so many people. Wait until those 10 people teach Hidden Fragrance a lesson. When the time came, she would come begging him. The enchanting beauty forcefully suppressed her anger and squeezed out a smile. Fine, Hidden Fragrance sleeves, you're quite strong-willed. I hope you can continue to be so strong-willed. Gu Xingyin chuckled and replied, you can rest assured that I, Hidden Fragrance flowing sleeves, won't live like you. Enchanting beauty. Why had she never realized before that Hidden Star flowing sleeves had such a cheap mouth? Gu Xingyin walked past Enchanting Beauty and walked out of Golden Hall. Fu Xingmeng Wu Xian, who stayed in Golden Hall, glanced at Enchanting Beauty and sneered softly, preparing to leave as well. Chapter 1897. Stunning Enchanting was already very upset. She saw that dark fragrance flowing sleeves would soon be in a miserable state, so she didn't argue with her. But who the hell was this unknown little girl in front of her? How dare such a silly girl laugh at her? She said with a cold face, are you laughing at me? Floating Dream blinked her big eyes and said innocently, no. Stunning Enchanting's face relaxed a little, but she immediately heard Floating Dream's next sentence. What's there to laugh at? Dark fragrance sleeves, I'm telling the truth. Stunning Enchanting, exclamation point. She glared at Floating Dream, and without saying a word, she waved the staff in her hand and cast a light spell. This was the only offensive skill of a sorcerer. Obviously, Stunning Enchanting was furious. Floating Dream's figure flashed and dodged the attack. She narrowed her eyes and said coldly, you ugly woman, how shameless of you to sneak attack others. Ugly woman? For a woman who had always been confident in her beauty, this word was simply a great insult. Stunning Enchanting was about to explode with anger. She shouted to the people next to her, don't you see that I'm being bullied? Are you all blind? Don't you know how to help me vent my anger? A dream of Floating Life's face was full of fear, like an innocent little white rabbit. What do you want to do? Stunning Enchanting finally felt a little better when she saw that she was about to tremble. She sneered and said, little girl, I'll teach you a good lesson today. I'll teach you how to be a man. Fu Xingmeng Wu Xian blinked his eyes and suddenly pulled something out of his backpack. It was the golden horn in this game. After using it, she could shout 3 sentences in the whole server to ensure that all online players could hear it. To be honest, this golden horn had no use, but it was very expensive. It was a very useless prop in this game. Seeing this little girl take out such a thing, Stunning Enchanting had a bad feeling in her heart. The next moment, she saw the little girl point the golden horn at her mouth and shout, brother, your sister is being bullied in Golden Hall. Brother, your sister was bullied in Golden Hall. Brother, your sister was bullied in Golden Hall. Many people raised their heads strangely when they heard this. Some gossipy players had their eyes lit up and ran toward Golden Hall. The beautiful and enchanting woman's face turned ashen. She looked at Fu Xingmeng Wu Xian and sneered, looking for a backer? I'm telling you, it doesn't matter who you call over today. I'm going to teach you a lesson. The beautiful and enchanting woman dared to say such a thing because she was looking at a fleeting dream. She didn't seem like someone who was active in the Huanma. If she really had a big backer, would she be so low-key? After saying that, she said to her left and right, what are you waiting for? Aren't you going to teach this little girl a lesson? No one spoke. The enchanting beauty felt that something was wrong. Before she could turn around, she heard a sinister voice, oh? You want to teach my sister a lesson? As her elder brother, I can't even do anything? The voice sounded familiar. Stunning Enchanting turned around doubtfully, and then her face turned pale in an instant. The man standing in front of her was wearing a large black cloak and holding a staff with a faint blue light in his hand. His extremely pale and handsome face was staring at her emotionlessly. Chapter 1898. What really made Exceptional Enchanting's expression change was his ID. Lich King. Dragon Roar's number 1 guild, Dark Shrines Guild leader, the number 1 dark mage in the entire server, Lich King. Although the Iron Blood pride was strong enough, it paled in comparison to the Darkness Shrine. That a fleeting dream was actually Lich King's sister. Exceptional Enchanting wanted to curse in her heart. With such a big backer, why did she have to pretend to be a little white rabbit? She forced a smile and said, "This is all a misunderstanding." Lich King still had the same gloomy expression and didn't even have a smile. Misunderstanding? I only believe what I see with my own eyes. Exceptional Enchanting. Gu Xingyin didn't know what happened after that. She went offline after completing the dating a fleeting dream unintentional quest. 5:30 p.m. She got up from the bed and walked in front of the dressing mirror. To be honest, Gu Xingyin was a little shocked when she first saw the person in the mirror. She was in the game when she transmigrated, and this was the first time she saw Dark Fragrance in real life. The Dark Fragrance in the game didn't have any facial features and could only be said to be delicate. She originally thought that the original owner of this world was an ordinary girl. But it was clear that she thought too much. The female lead's luck in this world was basically all beauties, and this setting couldn't escape. Looking back at her memories, sure enough, when Qin Liqing entered the game, she lowered her appearance value by 50%. The real Qin Liqing had snow-white skin and extremely beautiful facial features. No matter from which angle one looked at her, she was an extremely outstanding beauty. Moreover, Qin Liqing had a very special temperament. She wasn't cold, but when others looked at her, it was as if they were looking at a quiet spring in a snowy mountain. A quiet and peaceful feeling instantly spread through the heart and body, causing people to shiver. Qin Liqing's decision to quit her job and focus on the game had something to do with her appearance. A young and beautiful girl without a backer couldn't avoid being coveted by some scum. Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes and got up to go to the kitchen. There were still some vegetables and some noodles left. She found an egg in the fridge and made herself a bowl of vegetable and egg noodles. After finishing her dinner quickly, Gu Xingyin picked up the trash bag by the door and went downstairs. Every day after dinner, he would take an hour's walk and come back to read for a while before going online. This was basically her life. Just as he finished throwing away the trash, his phone rang. Gu Xingyin glanced at the caller ID and picked it up. Yuding? Kai Yuding was probably one of Qin Liqing's few friends. This girl's family was very well-to-do, and she was spoiled. She studied directing in university, and after graduation, she relied on her family's connections to make a good living in the entertainment industry. She was considered a relatively famous new director. Qing, have you thought about what I told you? That matter, Gu Xingyin refused her. I have said several times, Yuding, I am not interested in acting. You can find someone else. Kai Yuding had recently accepted a literary film, and the female lead in the film had not been decided yet. She had always been very fond of her good friend's temperament, and she refused to give up after being rejected many times. Gu Xingyin had no idea of developing another branch of the entertainment industry in this world, and once again refused her without hesitation. She habitually took out her mobile phone and clicked on the forum of Huanma while taking a walk. At this time, the video of the foot-scratching man not scratching his feet should have been posted. Chapter 1899. Gu Xingyin found a bench in the neighborhood and slowly sat down to read the news. As expected, the hooligan didn't even use a smuff account and directly used his own ID to post the two videos. Not only that, but she also expressed her opinion in a very excited tone. This is the first time I've seen a mage play like this. The games I played before were probably fake. Her words didn't hide her admiration for Dark Fragrance sleeves at all. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh when she thought of the girl who spoke so casually. She continued to scroll down. The post was already filled with comments. Majestic and flirtatious bunny, my mom asked me why I'm kneeling and playing with my phone. Dark Fragrance sleeves and I definitely don't play the same mage class. Small stormy building, upstairs +1, licking the screen addict's face the whole time. My Miss Dark Fragrance is so cool. Sean Dandon's bright red, upstairs, you're shameless. Who's your miss? Miss Dark Fragrance, please accept my worship, addict's face. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. Sure enough, no matter which world it was, there were all kinds of funny people in places like forums. This was the first video, which was the video of her PK with the dozen or so players. These comments were basically one-sided praises for her coolness. Looking at it, there was a line of people licking the screen. She watched for a while and continued to scroll down. The video of her battle with Chili was below. The style below was even weirder. One-sided brainless fans, damn, these two are so cool. From now on, my male gods and goddesses are Chili and Dark Fragrance sleeves. Miss Dark Fragrance, I want to give birth to monkeys for you. God, Chili is so cool. Do the two of them lack a leg accessory? The kind that can warm the bed, act cute, do housework, and earn money. The more rational ones, to be honest, I've watched this video over and over again dozens of times, but I still can't see their movements clearly. It's too fast. I've always been unconvinced before. Why is Chili always number one on the PK leaderboard? But now I'm convinced, boss. Do you want to take a disciple? If you take a closer look at the battle between the two of them, it doesn't have much to do with the game's skills. Looking at how few special effects light up between their moves, you can tell that most of their fighting moves are based on their own qualities. What did this mean? This means that Chili and Hidden Fragrance also have such terrifying abilities in real life. It's terrifying to think about. Upstairs, now that you mention it, I'm also terrified, thinking about it carefully +1, I think I've discovered some big shot. Thinking about it carefully +2, this is too fucking awesome. There were also some trolls running around. Who would believe such a stupid video? Dark Fragrance was a mage, yet she was able to solo and PK more than 10 offensive players? This is the biggest joke I've heard in this century. Either Dark Fragrance flowing sleeves cheated, or she spent her own money to find those people and put on a show together. Forget about Chili, he's always been so powerful. But Hidden Fragrance is just a mage, haha. I've been playing this game for more than a year. It's not like I haven't seen Hidden Fragrance flowing sleeves before. She's just a healer with decent skills. How can she be as good as in the video? However, the people on the forum weren't fools. Most of them could tell whether it was fake or photoshopped, okay? Chapter 1900. As for the cheat. Soon, Huanma's official staff came out to refute the rumors, saying that Huanma's core technology was quite confidential, and there was absolutely no sign of it being cracked. The so-called cheat was complete nonsense. Gu Xingyin read the post for a while, and her mood was quite good. That stunning enchanting must be in a good mood after reading this post. Anyway, she and stunning enchanting had already fallen out. She didn't know if her days in the Iron Blood heroic spirit would be as good as before. Gu Xingyin suddenly felt something and looked in a certain direction. What a coincidence. A black luxury car slowly drove into the community garage. After a while, a man and a woman walked out with suitcases. The system had already reminded her of the appearance of the mission target. Stunning enchanting? Gu Xingyin thought that her command had crossed paths with her on the internet. She didn't expect to meet her in real life. She looked over there carefully. The woman wearing a tight black leather jacket had an excellent figure, full breasts, thin waist, and perky buttocks. Walking on the road, she was definitely a very eye-catching stunner. Looking up at her face, Gu Xingyin didn't know why, but she felt a little disappointed. It wasn't that she wasn't beautiful. She had orange wavy hair and exquisite makeup. No matter how you looked at her, she was a beauty that was above average. Coupled with her voluptuous figure, she could definitely be called a gorgeous beauty. But maybe Gu Xingyin was used to her stunning face in the game. Seeing the real person without the halo bonus, she obviously felt a lot less beautiful. Gu Xingyin was sure that stunning enchanting's appearance was definitely adjusted. In her real appearance, although beautiful, she was far from the height of the #1 beauty in the server. Stunning enchanting frowned at the moment, and seemed a little unhappy. Next to her, a young man in a suit and leather shoes, who looked like a successful person, followed behind her with a suitcase. He seemed to be coaxing her. Gu Xingyin confirmed that stunning seductive didn't live in this neighborhood. But now, she seemed to be moving closer to Gu Xingyin, probably because of the plot. As if sensing Gu Xingyin's gaze, the enchanting beauty suddenly turned her head. The moment she saw Gu Xingyin, her mood became even worse. She was already annoyed in her heart. Now that she saw a beauty with an outstanding temperament and appearance that was not inferior to her own, leisurely leaning on the bench and sizing her up, she inexplicably felt even more displeased. When Gu Xingyin saw the stunning beauty looking over with a frown, she blinked her eyes and curled her lips into a faint smile. The man beside stunning beauty happened to turn around with his girlfriend and saw Gu Xingyin smile. He was stunned for a moment. The stunning and enchanting woman turned her head and saw the man's shocked expression. Anger rose in her heart, and she said coldly, "What are you looking at? You can't move after seeing a beauty? Zhang Jin, do you even put me, your girlfriend, in your eyes?" Zhang Jin came back to his senses and saw that the beauty in the white dress had already stood up and was about to leave. He quickly came back to his senses and coaxed his girlfriend, "Yao Yao, don't be angry. How can other women compare to you? In my eyes, there's only you." How could stunning beauty not understand the thoughts of these men? She didn't care about anything and coldly snorted. She stepped on her slender high heels and walked to the other side. Her boyfriend saw that she didn't give him any face and frowned for a moment before following her. Chapter 1901. When Gu Xingyin returned to his home, he spent some time checking up on stunning beauty. Of course, this important task was completed by the system. As Gu Xingyin expected, Stunning Allure had just moved in today. The successful man was her boyfriend, and this house was specially bought for Stunning Allure to make her happy. Gu Xingyin clicked her tongue in her heart. Qin Liqing liked this neighborhood a lot, and her goal was to buy a house in this nice neighborhood. However, she was still short of the down payment, so she could only rent someone else's house. Stunning Allure didn't have to do anything, and someone was rushing to give her a house. This was probably the difference between people, right? She shook off these random thoughts, took her hollow brain, laid on her bed and entered the game. As expected, she received dozens of messages as soon as she went online. Most of them were friend requests and messages from various big guilds trying to rope her in. Gu Xingyin roughly scanned through them and wrote a unified reply to those people. There were a few others. Frowny-faced Chili, come to Mount Doom at 8:30 tonight. I'll introduce you to the others in the team and kill the boss of Mount Doom at the same time. Gu Xingyin's heart moved, and she said, "Okay." She then looked at the others. Iron Blood, Dark Fragrance, why didn't you say that you were so skilled before? We've discussed it in the guild, and if you're willing to come back, we'll give you the position of an elder. He was a smart person, and he didn't say any hypocritical words, but directly stated his conditions. For a guild like Iron Blood Pride, the senior management wasn't just a title, but there were real benefits. Otherwise, who would be so bored as to spend so much time managing a large guild with over 1,000 members? However, a mere elder position, Gu Xingyin sneered. Iron Blood probably didn't know that the Dark Shrine had directly promised her the position of vice leader. She wasn't in the mood to use this to slap people in the face, so she casually rejected him. Fuxing Yiming, God, I didn't expect you to be so lucky, but you're also so strong. God, do you need a disciple? I really worship you to death. Gu Xingyin. You're a swordsman, and you want a mage to be your disciple? Don't you feel like you're being cheated? Of course, she still refused. Further down, Gu Xingyin glanced at it. It wasn't anything important, so she ignored it. With such a delay, if they wanted to go to Mount Doom volcano, they would have to set off immediately. Mount Doom. The rest of the people were already waiting here. Actually, there weren't many people. Other than Chi-Li and the toe-scratching man, there were only 3 people left. Swordsman players Majestic Bewitching Rabbit and I Am Swordsman Assassin player, Half-Life Dawn. If Gu Xingyin had a good memory, she would have realized that there were quite a few people who had supported her on the forum. At this moment, Majestic Beauty Bunny was pacing back and forth. Why isn't my goddess here yet? He tugged at I'm a Swordsman and asked, don't I look cool with my equipment? Can I get some extra points in front of the goddess? I am a swordsman. He didn't want to see this joker at all. Whenever he thought about how this joker's ranking on the PK leaderboard fluctuated with his, He felt tired. Chapter 1902. He said coldly, "Don't worry. Your appearance has always attracted girls." Majestic Bewitching Rabbit was delighted and said proudly, "Actually, I think so too. I'm a swordsman." He glanced at the pretty and tender little face of Majestic Wind and Bewitching Rabbit and silently shut his mouth. "Forget it, if I provoke him later, he'll draw his sword and start slashing people again." The toe-scratching burly man didn't scratch his feet. He looked at the two people who were bickering with each other with sparkling eyes. There was a kind of passionate aura in his eyes. Majestic Bewitching Rabbit didn't notice it, but I'm a swordsman felt weird. He felt that don't scratch his feet's gaze was very strange. He couldn't help but have goosebumps. But the other party was a girl, so he couldn't say it directly, so he could only hold it in. When Gu Xingyin arrived, she saw Qi Li and Don't Scratch His Feet talking about something. As for the other three people, a female assassin was standing alone on the side as if she was watching a good show, and two other swordsmen were bickering. Seeing her, the swordsman called Majestic Bewitching Rabbit's eyes lit up and he instantly jumped in front of her. "Hello goddess, let me introduce myself. I'm Majestic Bewitching Rabbit, you can call me Rabbit." Gu Xingyin looked at the swordsman who was obviously still a young man and showed a friendly smile. "Hello Rabbit, I'm Hidden Fragrance Sleeves." Majestic Bewitching Rabbit's face suddenly turned red. Was Gu Xingyin thinking about what she had just done? The girl in front of her blushed and asked shyly, "Goddess, do you have a boyfriend? Can I pursue you? I can cook and do housework, I eat little and don't take up much space." Gu Xingyin was dumbfounded. "I'm a swordsman," at the side coldly grabbed this silly girl by the collar and threw her into the sky. "How embarrassing." He said coldly, "I'm a swordsman, Hidden Fragrance Sleeves, nice to meet you." Gu Xingyin nodded. She could not help but look at the majestic and charming rabbit in the bushes. "I'm a swordsman," followed her gaze and explained, "he'll only lose a few HP at most. Don't worry about him." He thought for a moment and said, "Rabbit's personality is a bit funny, don't take his words too seriously." Before he could finish speaking, Majestic Bewitching Rabbit's indignant roar erupted from the bushes. "I'm the Blade Master. Fuck you. I want to PK you." "I'm a swordsman," said coldly, "it takes 3 months to drop a level." Majestic Demonic Rabbit. "I want to spar with you." Gu Xingyin couldn't hold it in any longer and burst out laughing. He was simply a clown. Qi Li and the others seemed to have seen enough of the commotion and walked over. As the team leader, Qi Li said, "This is a new member of our team. I'm sure everyone knows her. She's Hidden Fragrance, a mage." As he said this, he seemed to find it a little funny, so he added, "Well, not the usual kind of mage." Everyone laughed. The only female assassin who did not introduce herself also reached out her hand to Gu Xingyin. "Hidden Fragrance Sleeves, I've heard a lot about you. I'm Half-Life Morning Dawn." Gu Xingyin smiled and shook her hand. Half-Life Morning Dawn blinked and said, "Master, we know your skills, but I have to confirm it. After all, you're a mage, and we don't have any other healers in our team." Gu Xingyin instantly understood what she meant. She replied confidently, "Don't worry, I'm sure I'm a healer." She was violent, but at crucial moments, she was still very useful. Chapter 1903. Sometimes, it was better to take action than to talk. Gu Xingyin did not want to explain more to them. She said, "I heard that there will be an instance tonight. Why don't we try it together? When this instance is over, you can evaluate again and see if I have the strength of your team." Her words were very frank. So frank that it was a little rude. But such words, coupled with the strong combat power she had shown before, and that calm face, it inexplicably gave people a sense of confidence. The toe-scratching man opened his mouth to say something, but he was stopped by Qi Li. He said directly, "Then let's not waste time and enter the instance." He probably knew that a person like Dark Fragrance Flowing Sleeves would not take advantage of others for no reason. Gu Xingyin thought, "I'll get the best treatment, and I'll naturally prove to you that I have the corresponding strength." Mount Doom was a new instance, and its difficulty was the highest in the server. Qi Li's team had tried it twice before, but they were defeated by the final boss. After that, the mages of the fixed team had abandoned their accounts because of some things in real life. Their team had temporarily pulled people in to try it a few times, but they had not succeeded once. Not only Qi Li's team, but the entire server, no less than 100 teams had explored this instance. However, without exception, all of the 100 teams had died. There were even players who angrily went to the official forum to post questions, saying that with the current level and strength of the players, even if the top players on the PK list formed a team, they would not be able to pass this instance. He was simply toying with them. But the official forum gave a reply, saying that the instance that came out at each stage was developed according to the development of each stage of the game and the comprehensive strength of the players. It was impossible for there to be an unsolvable situation. In other words, although the difficulty of the Mount Doom instance was enough to reach the ultimate mode, in theory, it could be completely conquered. The official attitude was very tough, and the players' dissatisfaction was also suppressed. Back to the topic. Qi Li's fixed team had always been known as the first team in Dragon Roar. This first place was a ranking that included the elite teams of the major guilds. At least half of the first clears of the entire Dragon Roar server were in the hands of Qi Li's team. Naturally, they wanted to obtain the Mount Doom Volcano Instance dungeon as well. Before entering the dungeon, Qi Li had informed Gu Xingyin of some of the dungeon's characteristics. Gu Xingyin nodded to show that she understood. The instance dungeon was divided into 3 parts. The second round and the second round were all small bosses. Qi Li's team was already experienced and quickly got the hang of it. As a healer who only needed to stand behind her teammates and heal them, Gu Xingyin had nothing to do right now. Looking at the 5 of them, she didn't need to do anything for the time being, so she simply stood aside and observed them. It was obvious that the 5 of them had great teamwork. This kind of tacit understanding was naturally born after a long period of cooperation. Gu Xingyin could not integrate into it for the time being. She looked at the man in black who was at the front. At this moment, his sword was very stable, fast, and accurate. Every time he swung his sword, he was able to deal a considerable amount of damage. Without a doubt, Qi Li was the absolute center of the entire team. Chapter 1904. As for the others, after looking around, Gu Xingyin roughly understood why this team was able to suppress the elite teams of the major guilds and sit firmly on the throne of the top team. Every one of them was very strong, and their individual styles were very obvious. Looking at them separately, they could definitely be considered the best in their respective professions. However, after forming a team, these people spontaneously adjusted their state of mind. They did not have any intention of showing off. Instead, they tried their best to integrate themselves into the team and strive to maximize the team's strength. It would be strange if such a team was not strong. Gu Xingyin's eyes flashed. The first floor's mini-boss had fallen under Qi Li's last critical hit. Gu Xingyin pointed her staff, and a large white halo enveloped everyone. Flare of light, recovering 10% of the members' stamina. She clearly saw that in this battle that lasted less than 5 minutes, Swordsman was the only one who lost a bit of health. He had already taken a health potion the moment his health dropped. Swordsman looked at Gu Xingyin and said embarrassedly, "Sorry, I'm used to fighting without a magician. I can't change it in such a short time." He was afraid that Gu Xingyin would hold a grudge. After all, there was a magician here, and he still took a potion. It was an insult to her class. Gu Xingyin shook her head. No matter what class, it's all about the final victory. You can calculate your own health and recover it in time. That's your skill. Qi Li heard this and looked at Gu Xingyin strangely. He admired this female magician's character more and more. Next was the second round. It was also a Western dragon with half of its body in the lava. The bosses from the first 2 stages didn't have overpowered stats. Their biggest feature was their high HP. Even if it stood there and allowed the players to attack it, it would take more than 10 minutes for the players to kill it. Gu Xingyin displayed her overpowered attack for the first time in front of others. The others opened their eyes wide and stared at the 2 agile figures in front of the dragon. They could not help but be stunned. Majestic Presence and Bewitching Bunny stopped what they were doing when they saw the health bar of the boss. He opened his mouth wide and said, "When I watched the video before, I only thought that the goddess was very powerful. But now, seeing a mage deal damage that's even more frightening than boss, I really feel like this world is too fucking fantastic." One had to know that Chile used at least half of his skills as an assassin. It was easy for others to see the black light flashing on his dagger from time to time. However, Hidden Fragrance Sleeves was different. She had been using her self-created moves the entire time. In other words, it didn't belong to this game. It was a move that she had mastered herself. I Am Swordsman also stopped. They knew very well that this boss didn't need their help. He looked at the white-colored magician's silhouette and a glint flashed across his eyes. After this instant's dungeon is over, I must find her and spar with her. Majestic Demonic Rabbit. He knew it. I'm Swordsman, I'm a taciturn person. My personality is not likable at all. With a loud bang, the boss fell down unwillingly. Chile picked up all the dropped items and put them into the team's shared backpack. Their team had always waited until the instant's dungeon was over before splitting the loot. Chapter 1905. The six of them continued to move forward. The rest of them had solemn expressions. After all, they had failed this level many times. Gu Xingyin, on the other hand, was secretly excited. Conquering a monster that no one else could conquer was a feeling she was looking forward to. The final boss of the Volcano of Doom instance dungeon was a monster with 3 heads. The lower half of the monster's body was submerged in the red magma. On its 3 heads, 6 lantern-like eyes were half open. Almost as soon as they entered, Gu Xingyin felt a scorching heat surrounding her. The effect was indeed realistic. Chile looked at the final boss with a solemn expression. It seemed to be taking a nap. He said, "This monster doesn't actually have a lot of HP, but it's very difficult to deal with. We've failed every time because of this." He seemed to be talking to everyone, but Gu Xingyin knew that he was actually talking to her. After all, everyone here had encountered this boss several times. She was the only one who had encountered it for the first time. Chile continued, "This monster has 3 heads. We have to destroy the HP of all 3 of its heads at the same time to pass the level. However, this monster has a very disgusting skill." He looked helpless. As long as any one of its heads dies, it will trigger the monster to go berserk. The berserk monster only has one ultimate skill. The effect of that ultimate skill is, the entire Volcano of Doom instance dungeon will be flooded by magma. As soon as he said this, the rest of them showed a look of lingering fear. The 6 senses in this game were too realistic. The pain and feeling of watching oneself being swallowed by magma was really quite satisfying. Moreover, Hobo not scratching his feet continued, "It's not realistic to attack all 3 heads in turn. This monster has another disgusting skill, which is damage transfer. In other words, it can transfer the wound on any of its heads to the other heads. In other words, she looked like she had nothing left to live for. As long as the damage of all 3 heads reaches a certain level, it will immediately go berserk." What was even more shocking was that once this monster went berserk, it basically meant that the instance dungeon would fail. The entire instance dungeon would be flooded by magma. They had no chance of surviving in such an environment. Gu Xingyin was speechless. This was indeed a trap. She turned to Chile and asked, "Captain, what do you think?" Chile raised his eyebrows when he heard the way the captain addressed him. He glanced at Gu Xingyin and said, "If we want to clear the dungeon, there is only one way, and that is to deal a lot of damage and destroy all 3 of its heads at the same time." His words were very simple. Many people know about this method, but no team has ever succeeded. Gu Xingyin, she opened her virtual panel and looked at the monster's detailed data. After looking at it for a while, she suddenly said, "The boss has a total HP of 100,000. Each of its heads has about 33,000 HP, which means that it won't go berserk as long as the total damage doesn't exceed 33,000. Everyone nodded in agreement. Gu Xingyin asked again, "Well, I have an idea now. but there is a prerequisite. Hobo not scratching his feet heard that she had an idea. His eyes lit up and he quickly asked, "What is the prerequisite?" Gu Shengyin glanced at him and said, "Strictly control the boss HP, and then within 5 seconds, reduce the boss HP by 67,000. Chapter 1906. 5 seconds. Everyone looked at the boss's insane defense and fell silent. "I'm a blade master," spoke first. "Under normal circumstances, I can take away 800 of the boss's HP in one attack. If it's a critical hit, it's 1500 plus. Within 5 seconds, I can make up to 5 normal attacks and 1 single target skill. Single target skills can take away 3000 plus HP. If it's a critical hit, it's 5000 plus HP. For players to make 1 critical hit out of 5 normal attacks, it was considered good. In other words, I'm a blade master could deal around 700 to 800 damage in 5 seconds. In the entire team, I'm a blade master's attack was second only to Qili and Gu Shengyin. Moreover, Half-Life Morning Dawn was an archer and his single target damage was not as high as a swordsman's. Under normal circumstances, with perfect reflexes, the 4 of them could deal around 30,000 plus damage. Gu Shengyin and Qili needed to deal with more than half of the boss's HP in 5 seconds to clear the dungeon. Gu Shengyin looked at them and said, "Mages have a support skill that can stun the opponent for 5 seconds. However, I can't guarantee a 100% success rate. Moreover, mages don't have any single target skills. I can only use normal attacks for 5 seconds. I don't know how much damage I can do." Everyone was silent. The only advantage was that she could use her own skills and not be limited to 5 times. If she was fast enough, it wouldn't be impossible for her to do it dozens of times in 5 seconds. Gu Shengyin didn't mention this for the time being because she wasn't sure. Qili pondered for a moment and said, "If I use normal attacks, I can only attack 5 times. However, if I attack myself, I can attack 20 times in 5 seconds. However, I'm not sure how much damage I can do." He had never tried such a strategy before. Everyone was eager to try. In fact, they did not think that they could clear the dungeon like this. Qili decided, "Let's try it first and see if it's feasible." Everyone else nodded. And so, for the first time, in less than 2 minutes, everyone was back outside the dungeon. Seeing everyone looking at him, Majestic Bunny wanted to cry but had no tears. "I apologize." Who would have thought that his attack would result in a critical hit? Then, the boss instantly went berserk after losing one of its heads, and sent everyone back collectively. The second time, another 3 minutes passed. Gu Shengyin's face was expressionless as she calmly said, "I've already said that the stun skill can be dodged." Everyone, the third time, before entering the dungeon, Gu Shengyin suddenly said, "Wait." Everyone looked at her strangely. Gu Shengyin said calmly, "Let's all pray for good luck." Everyone, however, perhaps because they were influenced by Gu Shengyin, they suddenly started to believe in this. Gu Shengyin said calmly, "Make a wish, make a critical hit, stun once, and succeed." Everyone, with such a perfunctory manner, it would be strange if it really worked. But soon, their faces began to hurt. It was unexpectedly smooth. Seeing that the boss's health was about to reach a critical point, Gu Shengyin said, "Qili, go and make a critical hit." "I'll use a skill." Qili responded and rushed up without hesitation. He slashed the boss with his dagger. Critical hit. -3800. Chapter 1907. It was a critical hit. Everyone was overjoyed, but they did not have the time to admire it. Just as the boss's eyes turned red, a faint golden halo landed on its body. That was the most important thing. The boss's mountain-like body suddenly stopped moving. Everyone was overjoyed. It was a success. The black and white figures flashed, and almost instantly, 4 consecutive damage values appeared on the boss's body. -1400. -3900. -1498. -4200. Out of the 4 normal attacks from Gu Shengyin and Qili, 2 of them were critical hits. The others were not slow either. Almost at the same time when the stun halo landed, they were ready to attack, but their speed was not as fast as the other two. Skills flashed one after another, and the boss's HP dropped at a terrifying speed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There was almost 20,000 HP left. The boss's eyes turned red again. Half Dawn's eyes flashed with a hint of regret. They did not have time to attack, and Dark Fragrance had just finished her last attack. Only the leader's ultimate skill had not been used. Although the leader was strong enough, 20,000 damage, Gu Xingyi's eyes moved, and shouted, "Eyes!" Qili did not hesitate. The dagger in his hand suddenly flashed with a black light, and directly pierced into the boss's eyes. 6 pairs of eyes stared at it at the same time. 19999. Critical hit. Along with the bright red words, the boss's eyes in the lava suddenly darkened. At the same time, all the players in Dragon's Roar saw the golden words rising in mid-air. That was awesome. Congratulations to players, Qili, Hidden Fragrance, I Am a Swordsman, Hoof Not Hoof, Majestic Bewitching Rabbit, and Half-Life Dawn, for completing the first kill of the Mount Doom dungeon. The whole server was in an uproar. The whole world channel was crazily flooded with messages. Windy cool. What the fuck, am I hallucinating? The crazy volcano of Doom dungeon was actually cleared? Eat duck or eat chicken, Guru Qili's team is awesome. No, I need to eat spicy sticks to calm down. Watch a lively scene, upstairs, you're not eating chicken or duck. Switch to spicy strips. Eat chicken or eat duck, I'm tight on money recently, so I can't afford it. Fu Xing Yiming Wuxin, great gods, you are so powerful. Ah. That crazy dungeon, Mount Doom volcano, I've already knelt there a dozen times. However, no matter how lively the world channel was, it clearly had nothing to do with the current 6-man party. At this moment, they were watching the boss in the lava unwillingly collapse, turning into a crimson light and disappearing. In the place where the boss had been, there was a huge treasure chest that was almost half the height of a normal person. Majestic presence and seductive Bunny's eyes lit up as he stared at the treasure chest. Oh my god, this is the first time I've seen such a huge treasure chest. Not only him, but the others also saw such a big treasure chest for the first time in Huanma. The few of them looked at each other, and in the end, they all looked at Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin was confused. Why are you all looking at me? Qili smiled. That's because our entire team is unlucky. You seem to be quite lucky. That's right. How many critical hits did they make in the 5 seconds just now? This was something that had completely exceeded the normal probability of happening. Chapter 1908. The few of them who were always unlucky thought about it carefully. It seemed that before the battle, Dark Fragrance's attitude was very perfunctory. Everyone used this to tease her before, but they never thought that it would actually be very useful. Whether it was a coincidence or not, everyone felt that they could pin their hopes on one more time. What if there was another coincidence? Gu Xingyin was a bit helpless. She said, aren't things like probabilities set by the system? Half-century Morning Dawn said seriously, however, this thing really depends on one's luck. And it was clear that their entire team wasn't the type with good luck. Gu Xingyin said helplessly, okay, since it's like this, I'll give it a try. But let's make it clear, if it's trash, I won't take the blame. Toe-scraping burly guy casually said, Sister Dark Fragrance, don't worry. No matter how unlucky you are, you won't surpass us. The others nodded in agreement. Gu Xingyin, she didn't waste any more words. She walked up, reached out her hand, and gently placed it on top of the chest. A glaring golden light lit up. Before everyone could see the contents of the chest clearly, another server announcement appeared in the sky, a phenomenon has descended from the heavens, a divine artifact has appeared. Congratulations to player Dark Fragrance for obtaining the golden divine artifact Shadowless Boots. The world channel exploded again. In the dungeon, the 5 people looked at the announcement in the sky and fell silent again. After a while, I'm a swordsman sighed, our team has been here for more than a year, and we've finally welcomed a golden finger. Golden finger was the name given to players in Huanma who were especially lucky and had a high chance of opening treasure chests. Majestic Presence Bewitching Rabbit directly shouted, "Damn, I can't believe I'm able to see someone get a divine artifact in my lifetime. Sister Dark Fragrance. Do you still need a leg accessory?" At this time, the golden light finally dissipated and they could finally see the contents of the chest clearly. There were many things in the chest, but the most eye-catching one was a pair of gorgeous black boots with golden edges at the top. These boots should be the divine artifact Shadowless boots. "Don't scratch his feet," the big guy clicked his tongue and lamented, as expected of a divine artifact. "Just by looking at it, you can tell that it's of a high grade." Gu Xingyin picked it up, and the attributes of the boots immediately appeared before everyone's eyes. Name, Shadow Boots Grade, Golden Divine Artifact Suitable Professions, all. Properties. Equipping this godly relic increases players' agility by 25% and grants a 30% chance to dodge a fatal attack. Limited to 2 attacks per round. Fuck. Majestic Presence and Flirtatious Bunny's eyes widened. These stats are heaven-defying. Gu Xingyin was also surprised. She didn't expect the boots' attributes to be so good. With a 25% increase in agility, it was simply the best partner for certain classes with high agility. The group fell silent for a moment before looking at Qi Li, Gu Xingyin, and Half-Life Qin Shao. The other 3 were swordsmen, so in comparison, the effect of this divine weapon would not be so obvious. However, archers and archers were both jobs that required high agility. As for Gu Xingyin, although mages didn't have high agility requirements, they couldn't help but be heaven-defying. Everyone thought about Hidden Fragrance's frightening speed. If she had this 25% boost, Half-Life Qin Shao spoke first, "I don't want it." Seeing everyone's gaze on her, she smiled and said, "It's a waste for this divine artifact to be on me. Relatively speaking, Captain and Sister Dark Fragrance can make use of it better." Chapter 1909. Gu Xingyin was shocked. After all, this was a celestial artifact. It was very likely that the value of the other items in the treasure chest was not even half of the value of this celestial artifact. Half Morning Dawn actually said that she did not want it. This girl's eyes were too calm. Gu Xingyin looked at her and confirmed that this was her true thoughts. She looked at the shadow boots on the ground and silently looked at her own attribute panel. Suddenly, she said, "I don't want this either. Leader, you take it." This time, Qi Li was really surprised. He really liked this celestial artifact. However, he had thought about it. If the 2 girls in the team wanted it, as a man, he would not fight for it. He did not expect that the 2 of them would give it up one after another. Meeting the gazes of the others, Gu Xingyin smiled casually and said, "For a celestial artifact like the shadow boots, of course, it is best for the user to use it to the fullest. My basic agility isn't that good, so using this 25% bonus on me is really a waste." When she said this, everyone remembered that Dark Star Full Sleeves was a mage. As for mages, they did not have any requirements for agility. Naturally, their basic attributes were not very high. Qi Li looked at Gu Xingyin seriously. After confirming that this was her true thoughts, he nodded. "Then I'll take the boots. Let's check the other items first and see what we got this time." Hearing this, the few of them turned their attention to the treasure chest. Looking at it, they could not help but feel that Gu Xingyin was indeed a huge cheat. The items in this treasure chest were really too many. Apart from some miscellaneous trinkets, there were still a few items that were relatively good. Star Necklace, Blessing from the Star Goddess. Suitable for mages. Critical hit +2. A set of purple high-tier equipment blueprint. If the attributes of this set were good, the effect of the set would be comparable to a celestial artifact. As for this set, it was obviously a set of equipment with very good attributes. The 3 swordsmen looked at each other and chose the fairest role. This time, Gu Xingyin truly understood what it meant to be unlucky. "I'm a swordsman managed to get this set of blueprints with only 2 points." Because the other 2 Africans were both 1, Gu Xingyin looked around. She took a star necklace and chose some good materials. All of these things had one thing in common: they were very rare and valuable. That's right, Gu Xingyin was planning to sell all of these things. After everyone had chosen their items, Qi Li swiped on the virtual panel. Everyone's account had an additional 50,000 crystal coins. Gu Xingyin looked at him in surprise. Qi Li smiled. Don't refuse. I'm the only one who's taken advantage of this. You deserve it. Gu Xingyin glanced at the others and found that they all accepted the items with normal expressions. The hooligan didn't scratch his feet. He quietly came to Gu Xingyin's side and said, Sister Hidden Fragrance, just accept it. My brother is a tycoon. If he gives you money, don't be polite. Just accept it. Since her sister said so, Gu Xingyin no longer held back. She calculated her wallet and suddenly laughed. I seem to have saved enough for the down payment of a house. As soon as this was said, the others asked with interest, Sister Dark Fragrance wants to buy a house? Where is Sister Dark Fragrance from? Gu Xingyin told them the city she was in. Qi Li's expression changed. She was in the same city? Chapter 1910. What a coincidence, Sister Dark Fragrance. I'm also in Deep Sea City. Which district are you in? Gu Xingyin reported her approximate location. After all, Deep Sea City was so big. She didn't believe that they could guess her location in such a big district. Hearing this, Big Guy Scratched Feet said with some regret, It's a little far, but if we have time, we can come out and meet. Gu Xingyin smiled and didn't answer. She didn't want to connect reality with the internet. The few of them chatted for a while and left the dungeon. The Doomsday Volcano dungeon was a bit mysterious. When in the dungeon, no news from the outside world could be received. So as soon as she came out, Gu Xingyin found that her private chat was constantly flashing. She clicked on it. Sure enough, they were all players who were asking about the strategy of the Doomsday Volcano dungeon. Originally, those people were very interested in the Doomsday Volcano dungeon. Now that they had dropped a divine artifact, it aroused the interest of many players. Many people were holding on to the hope that next time, they would be in such a good mood and want to give it a try. However, most of the people with such thoughts had not studied the game carefully. If they had studied it carefully, they would have found that so far, there had never been any dungeon or secret realm that had produced more than 2 divine artifacts. Moreover, basically, in any dungeon, the richest rewards were at the time of the first kill. Gu Xingyin raised her head and looked at the others. Sure enough, everyone had received private chats. Don't Scratch Feet was a simple-minded girl. She said, when we were in the dungeon, I always had a video recording on. Otherwise, would have posted it on the forum. It would have saved these people from constantly looking for us. Gu Xingyin took a look and found that everyone else seemed to agree with him. She sighed and said, if possible, do you mind if I use this video to exchange for something? The others looked at her doubtfully. Gu Xingyin blinked and said, there must be many guilds and teams that want our strategy now. Why don't we sell it? Everyone, Dark Fragrance's reputation of loving money really wasn't a lie. Qi Li turned to look at Gu Xingyin. This girl, whose face was delicate and pretty to the point of being somewhat cold, had a face without any desire as she spoke of her extremely realistic plan without any change in her expression. His heart skipped a beat. He actually felt that this Dark Fragrance flowing sleeves looked a little cute. Qi Li thought to himself with an expressionless face. This was probably what his little sister often said, contrasting cuteness. To be honest, none of the 5 members of Qi Li's fixed team lacked money. Naturally, they had never thought of this problem. However, they weren't some kind of saint who loved Feng Xian. They only suggested putting the video on the internet because they thought it was convenient to avoid being harassed all the time. Since Gu Xingyin had spoken, they naturally wouldn't have any objections. The man didn't scratch his feet. He directly sent the video to Gu Xingyin and said, I'm not good at these things. Sister Hidden Fragrance, you can do as you see fit. Gu Xingyin looked at them and knew that they had never done such a thing before. She nodded and took the things without saying anything. She directly sent a message to the World Channel, Dark Fragrance Flowing Sleeves. If you want the Mount Doom walkthrough video, send me a private message. Not long after this sentence appeared, Gu Xingyin's private chat became lively. The first person to contact Gu Xingyin was Dark Fragrance Flowing Sleeves' old boss, Iron Blood Heroic Feelings. Chapter 1911. Iron Blood, are you there, Dark Fragrance? Gu Xingyin looked at the way Iron Blood addressed her, and the corner of her mouth curled up for some reason. She clearly remembered that when she first came to this world and left Iron Blood Lofty Guild, Iron Blood had called her Dark Fragrance Sleeves. It was as if the friendship between Dark Fragrance Sleeves and Iron Blood Lofty Guild for more than a year no longer existed. Now he was trying to get close to her. She glanced at it and closed the chat window. The other people who came to Gu Xingyin were basically people from the big guilds. Occasionally, there were a few accounts that she didn't know. Gu Xingyin's reply was quite simple. You want a strategy video? Sure, no problem. I'll buy it for 10,000 crystal coins. It was also this time that Gu Xingyin knew that there were really a lot of rich people in this game. This was because she basically didn't hear anyone refuting her words. They would transfer the money to him without hesitation. Soon, she had traded with more than 10 people. At this time, Iron Blood sent another message. Gu Xingyin took the time to reply to him. Iron Blood Lofty Guild was silent for a moment, and very straightforwardly transferred the crystal coins to Gu Xingyin's account. However, after the money was cleared, Iron Blood Lofty Guild didn't immediately leave. They once again tried to befriend Gu Xingyin. The meaning behind his words was that he wanted Dark Fragrance Sleeves to return to Iron Blood Lofty Guild. Gu Xingyin sneered, everyone knows about the grudge between me and Enchanting Beauty. Iron Blood Guild leader, are you willing to kick such a beauty out of the guild? Iron Blood didn't think that after so long, Dark Fragrance Sleeves would still report about such things. He said, it's all a small misunderstanding. We're all adults. What's so hard about this kind of small conflict? Enchanting Beauty already told me that she's willing to shake hands with you and make peace. Gu Xingyin sneered and interrupted him, shake hands and make peace? What does Enchanting Beauty count for? What qualifications do you have to shake hands with me? Let me tell you the truth, Iron Blood Guild leader. I, Hidden Fragrance, am not a magnanimous person. I will never forgive those who have offended me. As for that beautiful and enchanting woman, she sneered. Keep an eye on her and remember to tell her to be careful. Don't fall for me. Iron Blood did not expect that Hidden Fragrance Sleeves would be so difficult to deal with. These days, as Dark Fragrance's reputation in the server grew, many of the guild's elders were dissatisfied with him for letting Dark Fragrance leave the guild. Those elders had a lot of authority in the guild. If they were really dissatisfied with him, it would affect his image in the guild. As for stunning Enchanting Beauty, she had been grumbling and acting coquettishly in his ears these days. Sometimes, he would get impatient, but when he turned around and saw the beautiful and enchanting face, all his anger would instantly dissipate. Men, after all, could not resist the charms of beautiful women. The two of them parted on bad terms. Gu Xingyin deleted Iron Blood from her friends list. She suddenly remembered that she had seen stunning Enchanting Beauty in person. She had clearly seen that man at the time. He was not Iron Blood. At 10:00 in the evening, Gu Xingyin finished the last round of transactions. She counted and found that there were more than 20 teams looking for her for the video. On average, each person would earn more than 40,000 crystal coins. She transferred the money to other people's accounts and soon received a surprised reply. Chapter 1912. Gu Xingyin briefly explained the situation. Majestic and flirtatious bunny, as expected of my goddess. Her business acumen is amazing. I'm convinced. Chili didn't say much. He just sent a thumbs up emoji. Gu Xingyin looked at the time. It was 10:30 p.m. She said goodnight to them and logged out of the game. Gu Xingyin, who had just woken up, quickly took a shower and washed up before lying on the bed. She estimated her current savings. It was enough for the down payment of a house in this neighborhood. She had already found a house in this neighborhood, but it was in another building. The environment there was better. Facing the floor-to-ceiling window was a huge garden with flowers blooming all year round. Gu Xingyin thought for a while. Buying a house was more or less half of Qin Liqing's wish. She didn't go online the next day. Instead, she went to the sales center. Because she had been paying attention for a long time, Gu Xingyin went through all the procedures without a hitch. The sales lady was very enthusiastic and recommended several well-reputed renovation companies to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin thanked her and chose one based on her preferences. The whole day passed in a blink of an eye. Gu Xingyin was in a good mood. She decided to reward herself with a good meal. She went to a very famous buffet restaurant in the city. She couldn't help it. Whether it was Chinese or Western food, it was better for 2 or more people to eat. She did not expect that she would be able to witness such a good show during a simple meal. She took a plate of fruit salad and chose a steak and a cocktail. She found a seat by the window and ate slowly. She glanced at the young people riding bicycles in pairs in the square outside the window. A voice caught her attention. "Why don't you go to a proper Western restaurant?" The woman's voice sounded like she was complaining. Gu Xingyin immediately knew who it was. She turned around. It was indeed an enchanting woman. However, the man sitting opposite her gave Gu Xingyin a shock. Iron blood? Why was he here? In her impression, when Dark Fragrance was still in Iron Blood, she had heard Iron Blood mention that he was from a northern city. Why would he appear in Deep Sea City? Gu Xingyin glanced at the stunning beauty across from him again, and he roughly knew what was going on. She didn't expect that Iron Blood would come all the way here for the enchanting woman. Gu Xingyin shook her head when she thought of the man with the enchanting woman pulling a suitcase. It was another bad debt that couldn't be settled. On the other hand, she didn't know what Iron Blood said, but the enchanting woman's face looked better. Iron Blood asked her to sit while he went to get the food. Gu Xingyin looked at the beautiful and enchanting woman who was playing with her phone with her head lowered. He looked away and continued eating. At that moment, "Brother, let me tell you, although this is a buffet, the food inside is very delicious, especially the steak." The doorbell rang, and a lively female voice came from outside the door. Gu Xingyin abruptly raised his head. She stared at the 2 figures that entered the door. No, to be precise, it was the tall man in black. Gu Xingyin was familiar with that face because she saw it every day in the game. So, he was Qi Li. Gu Xingyin felt that the world was too small. She tried to find her lover in this world several times, but to no avail. She also guessed that he might be a character in the game, but she couldn't be sure. Qi Li seemed to sense something and looked in Gu Xingyin's direction. Their eyes met. Chapter 1913. Qi Li's eyes widened for a moment. His first impression was that the woman sitting by the window not far away was very beautiful. But beauty alone was not enough to attract him. Qi Li had seen many beautiful women in his life, but none of them made him feel this way. This feeling was like standing in the cold wind of winter and suddenly seeing the dark clouds break through the sun. He felt a sense of satisfaction from head to toe. It was as if an invisible void had been filled. The girl standing beside him did not hear her brother's response. She tilted her head in confusion and followed his gaze to see Gu Xingyin. She instantly understood. Oh, a gentle and graceful woman is a good match for a gentleman. Who would have thought that a blockhead like her brother would be dazed by a beautiful woman? The little sister who cared about her brother said that she wanted to be a godly assistant. Hence, without another word, she pulled her elder brother to another seat by the window, which happened to be right next to Gu Xingyin's seat. Exceptional Enchanting's eyes widened in shock. It was a working day and not meal time, so there were not many people in the shop. When Qi Li and his sister entered, Exceptional Enchanting raised her head out of habit. She recognized Qi Li at a glance. It would be strange if she did not recognize him. Qi Li's face was marked in the hearts of the players of Dragon Roar. Now that he had a face that was no different from the game, it would be hard for others not to recognize him. Who would have thought that he was even more handsome in real life than in the game? Exceptional Enchanting's heart skipped a beat. In terms of fame, Chi was much more famous than Iron Blood. Moreover, that damned woman Dark Fragrance Sleeves was in God Chi's team. If she could form a good relationship with Chi, her eyes flashed and a smile appeared on her face. At this moment, Iron Blood walked over with food. He had been on the other side and did not notice the two people who entered the shop. The enchanting beauty waved at him and turned to look at Chi. She said, "Look, isn't that Chi the great master?" Chi. Tai Shui frowned and looked in that direction. It really was him. Tai Shui's gaze shifted to Chi body in an inquisitive manner. Well, the clothes on her body looked quite exquisite, but they weren't famous brands. It seemed that this Master Chi was not as wealthy as him in real life. This realization put Predator in a good mood. Men also like to compete, especially in front of beautiful women. Predator Blood felt that he had been suppressed in the game. Perhaps he could regain some of his dignity in real life. He smiled and said, "The Federation is so big. It's fate that we can meet a player from the same server. Why don't we go and say hello?" This sentence was exactly what the enchanting beauty wanted. Thus, Bun, who was waiting for gossip, and Chi, who was thinking about his abnormal reaction, saw a group of respectable men and women walking towards them. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but are you Chi?" Predator asked with a polite smile. Chi raised his eyebrows and glanced at him. He looks a little familiar, but I don't recognize him. Could it be someone who had seen him in the game before?" He nodded coldly. "I am." Then, there was nothing else. Predator, who had prepared a self-introduction and was waiting for the question. Chapter 1914. If the other party didn't follow the script, he couldn't continue. He stood there awkwardly, but Chi's mind wasn't on him at all. He was thinking about the girl at the next table. It was a strange feeling. Chi had never had such an impulse before. He wanted to know and understand a girl. She seemed to have a special attraction that made him want to get close to her. Chi thought seriously, is this the legendary love at first sight? Seeing Iron Blood being ignored like that, a trace of impatience flashed in Enchanting Beauty's eyes. This man was so useless. He didn't even know how to hit on her. It seemed that if she wanted to get close to the number one god, she would have to do it herself. Enchanting Beauty's thoughts turned and she naturally let go of Iron Blood's hand. She put on a smile and looked at Chi, who didn't even look up. She said, "Is it really God Chi? What a coincidence that we're on the same server. I'm Enchanting Beauty. Nice to meet you." Chi didn't plan on paying attention to her, but her name caught his attention. Enchanting Beauty, wasn't she the one who had a conflict with Dark Fragrance? He had always admired Dark Fragrance full sleeves as an opponent, so he naturally paid more attention to her matters. Enchanting Beauty didn't think that there would be a man who didn't care about her title as the number one beauty in the server. He knew that she was a sworn enemy. Chi looked up at her and nodded. "Nice to meet you." The girl sitting across from him looked up curiously because of Enchanting Beauty's words. Unlike his big brother, the toe-picking hunk did not care about his feet. He was always interested in gossip. When he heard that, he quickly raised his head, wanting to see what the so-called number one beauty of the server looked like. After a glance, she lowered her head. Sure enough, in this day and age, with the 50% buff of the game, how could there be a real beauty? This was the first time Enchanting Beauty met a man who didn't take her seriously. She gritted her teeth, but she still smiled. "I think the world is so big. It's fate that we met. How about we share a table?" Chi said faintly, "No need. Dark Fragrance doesn't like you. If she knows that we're close to you, she won't be happy." Hidden Fragrance filling the sleeves. Exceptional Beauty clenched her teeth. She didn't forget to give Dark Fragrance sleeves a bad look. It's just a game. How can those grudges be brought into reality? Dark Fragrance sleeves likes to make a fuss about nothing. I actually don't care about those things at all. This meant that Hidden Fragrance was petty. Chi frowned, but he couldn't lose his temper at a woman. But he had a younger sister. The hobo man doesn't scratch his feet, put down his phone. He looked at Stunning Beauty and said seriously, although it's a game, a person's character won't change. People who could play dirty tricks in the game shouldn't be underestimated in real life. A stunning and enchanting beauty, don't you think so? The beautiful woman's expression stiffened. She had never expected that the other party would not give her any face. She bit her lips, and in the end, she could only hatefully say, "Hidden fragrance sleeves, that woman is incomparably arrogant, and her thoughts are heavy. You guys should be a bit more careful when you're in the same team as her." Chapter 1915. Gu Xingyin had just finished her last bite of steak. She slowly put down the knife and fork in her hand, then turned to look at the enchanting beauty standing at the side. "Thank you for your concern, but it's not up to an outsider like you to tell me what kind of person I am and how I get along with my teammates." Her clear and cold voice was like a quiet spring, clearly ringing in everyone's ears. Qi Li's expression froze. The meaning behind this sentence, he suddenly turned to look at Gu Xingyin. It wasn't just him. In this small corner, the other three people also looked at her. Gu Xingyin slowly stood up. Her eyes didn't fall on Iron Blood and Stunning Beauty at all. She walked straight to Qi Li and Foot Digging Man Not Digging Feet. She lowered her head slightly and revealed a smile. "Nice to meet you. I'm Hidden Fragrance." This small space instantly quieted down. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Stunning Beauty recognized Gu Xingyin the moment she stood up. She was the woman she saw in the neighborhood that day. After all, with Qin Liqing's beauty, it was hard for people to forget her at first glance. But, how could she be Hidden Fragrance? She couldn't be Hidden Fragrance. Qi Li was also stunned. He didn't expect that this girl would be a teammate who was very compatible with him. This was really, really inconceivable. This was clearly a very strange thing, but Qi Li didn't doubt Gu Xingyin's words at all. She was dark fragrance flowing sleeves, he believed so firmly. But his sister sitting next to him widened her eyes. Foot Digging Man Not Digging Feet stood up and stared at Gu Xingyin in surprise. "You're really Sister Hidden Fragrance?" Her appearance was the same as in the game. She could be recognized at a glance. Gu Xingyin smiled. "It's the real deal." "Impossible." Stunning Beauty's sharp voice rang out. Gu Xingyin frowned and turned her head in displeasure. Her clear eyes swept over the enchanting body of the peerless beauty, and suddenly, a meaningful smile appeared on her face. "Impossible what? Do you think it's impossible for me to be Hidden Fragrance? What a coincidence. I couldn't tell that you were such an enchanting beauty." Gu Xingyin sized up peerless enchanting beauty from head to toe, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. "After all, you are the number one beauty in the entire server." She deliberately raised her voice when she said the last word. The sarcasm in her voice was self-evident. The toe-picking burly man did not scratch his feet and burst into laughter. The enchanting beauty was furious. "You?" Gu Xingyin replied unhurriedly, "What about me? I'm a low-key person. I don't like to exaggerate my looks. I like to be a passerby in the game, unlike some people who like to be in the limelight and beautify themselves to the point that even their own mother can't recognize them. Is there a problem? You?" The Stunning Beauty's hands were trembling. She pointed at Gu Xingyin and was so angry that she couldn't say anything for a long time. Gu Xingyin still wanted to provoke her. "Didn't your family tell you not to point at others casually when you were young? It's very uncultured." The toe-picking burly man looked at Stunning Beauty's ashen face that couldn't be covered by her exquisite makeup. He was a bit worried that something bad would happen to her from being angered by Gu Xingyin. She couldn't help but look at her brother, only to find that he was currently staring at Gu Xingyin without blinking. Chapter 1916. From the perspective of the toe-digging big guy who wasn't scratching his feet, his brother's eyes that were looking at dark fragrance flowing sleeves were simply glowing. Even his lips couldn't help but curl into a smile. This time, the toe-digging big guy who wasn't scratching his feet didn't have the heart to care about stunning enchanting. His brother was clearly more important. Looking at him like this, the toe-digging big guy who wasn't scratching his feet could be confirmed with her experience after spending a long time in various forums. Her brother's attitude towards dark fragrance flowing sleeves was not normal. Heavens! Her big brother who was like a block of wood, could it be that he was finally enlightened? Just as the brother and sister were thinking about their own matters, Stunning Enchanting held back for a long time and finally forced out her first plan. You slut. Unfortunately, Gu Xingyin, who heard this, didn't even bat an eyelid. She clicked her tongue, glanced at Stunning Enchanting, and slowly said, "Girl, why bother saying such unpleasant words? It's simply vulgar, don't ruin your good looks." Cough. Looking at his female companion's appearance, Iron Blood, who had been standing on the side like an invisible person, felt that he should come out and make his presence known. He looked at Gu Xingyin with a somewhat complicated expression and said, "I didn't think that you would be dark fragrance flowing sleeves." Gu Xingyin glanced at him and said, "There are many things in this world that you can't think of." Iron Blood, he could roughly understand Enchanting's mood. Dark fragrance flowing sleeves really didn't give any face when she spoke. He frowned and said, "I know that there are some misunderstandings between you and Enchanting, but for everyone to be able to meet in real life is also a kind of fate. Why bother to be so aggressive?" Gu Xingyin heard this and looked at him with a puzzled expression. "May I ask where is Chairman Iron Blood's position?" Iron Blood's heart moved when he heard this. Could it be that dark fragrance flowing sleeves had some thoughts about him? For a beauty of this level to be interested in him, it was a very honorable thing. Iron Blood somewhat complacently said, "I started my own business, and now it can be considered a small business." He thought that after he said this, the other party would look at him with a very appreciative gaze. But in fact, "Oh," Gu Xingyin replied faintly, then asked, "I thought you were a patrol officer of the Pacific Ocean, President Predator." Tai Shui's face instantly turned ashen. She was indirectly scolding him for being a busybody. When Stunning Enchanting Beauty finally finished preparing her second wave of words and was about to speak, Gu Xingyin took the initiative to strike first. She did not say much and only looked at Predator with a faint smile. "Right, seeing that we were once in the same guild, I would like to advise Guild Leader Predator, now that spring has come, everything is growing, everywhere is filled with greenery. President Iron Blood, you'll have to pay close attention to this." After she finished speaking, she glanced meaningfully at the beautiful and enchanting woman standing beside him. Tai Shui's heart trembled. He understood the meaning behind Hidden Fragrance Sleeve's words. Was she warning him that there was a problem with her stunning beauty? Stunning Enchanting Beauty did not understand this and continued to speak. "Don't try to act mysterious here, Hidden Fragrance Sleeve, you." Iron Blood suddenly pulled her back and said to Gu Xingyin in a deep voice, "People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. It's better to leave a way out as a person." Gu Xingyin directly turned around and pretended she did not hear anything. Iron Blood pulled the unconvinced Stunning Enchanting Beauty out of the door without looking back. Gu Xingyin turned around and met two pairs of sparkling eyes. Toe-digging big guy not digging his feet looked at her with admiration. "Big sister Hidden Fragrance, you're really too amazing." Chapter 1917. Gu Xingyin smiled and said, "Do you mind if I share a table with you?" The toe-scratching burly man didn't scratch his feet and hurriedly sat down. So Gu Xingyin sat down, facing Qili. Don't Scratch Feet looked at Gu Xingyin with his chin in his hand. "You really are Sister Dark Fragrance. I always feel that it's so magical." In holographic online games, she had seen many people who didn't want to reveal their true faces. However, she had only seen one person who was willing to make themselves look so ugly. Who would have thought that the ordinary-looking dark fragrance in the game would actually look so good in real life? Gu Xingyin pretended to be angry and stared at her. "You don't believe me? If you don't believe me, then give me back the 40,000 crystal coins." Hearing this, the burly man who was not scratching his feet burst out laughing. "This time, I really believe that you are Sister Dark Fragrance." Don't Scratch Feet blinked and introduced herself. "My surname is Qiao Yen Yen. Sister Dark Fragrance can call me Yen Yen." She pointed at her brother as she spoke, but before she could speak, Qili said it himself. "My name is Qiao Fengwan, Feng from Kaifeng, Luan from Shanluan." Gu Xingyin nodded and also reported her name, Qin Liqing, Qin from Qin Shi Huang, Lu from Happy, Qing from sunny sky. Qiao Fenghuan repeated the name twice, and then glanced at Gu Xingyin. Her temperament was not very similar to her name. Gu Xingyin looked at the food in front of the two siblings. It seemed that they had just started eating. She also slowly ate the salad on her plate. The three people occasionally chatted, and the atmosphere was quite harmonious. Only Qiao Yanyan kept looking at her brother. If she didn't see wrong, her brother's eyes had been glued to Sister Liqing's body, and he really didn't restrain himself at all. Gu Xingyin of course also noticed Qiao Fenghuan's burning gaze. She calmly watched the two siblings finish eating. Putting down the things in her hands, Gu Xingyin suddenly raised her head and looked at Qiao Fenghuan. She asked, "If I may ask, Mr. Qiao, do you have a lover now?" Qiao Fenghuan was stunned. He shook his head subconsciously. On the other hand, Qiao Yanyan's ears pricked up and her eyes instantly lit up. Something's wrong. After getting the expected answer, Gu Xingyin smiled and asked, "Since you don't have any, Mr. Qiao, can you consider me?" Qiao Yanyan was shocked by Gu Xingyin's straightforward words. My goddess is indeed handsome. Even his confession was so aggressive. Qiao Fenghuan's expression remained calm. However, no one knew that when he heard these words, his heart was beating like a drum. Even his brain was heating up. Qiao Fenghuan did not doubt that his ears, which were hidden under his hair, were burning hot. As for Gu Xingyin's words, under the gaze of the two women, Qiao Fenghuan slowly frowned. Gu Xingyin was puzzled for a moment. Is there a problem? Qiao Yanyan was also puzzled. Could it be that her brother doesn't have that kind of feeling for Sister Liqing? Then they heard Qiao Fenghuan speak. This kind of thing, it's better to let a man speak, right? Gu Xingyin's heart returned to its original place and raised a mischievous smile. Who told me to take a fancy to you and couldn't wait for a moment? Qiao Fenghuan, he inexplicably felt sullen as if his lines had been completely snatched away. Qiao Yanyan, his goddess was really aggressive. Chapter 1918. Qiao Fenghuan suddenly straightened his expression and stared intently at Gu Xingyin. I want to say this first. I'm a very serious person. I won't joke about matters of the heart. He was actually a bit nervous in his heart. Gu Xingyin's attitude was so natural that it was a little frivolous. He was afraid that Gu Xingyin was just joking and he would fall for it. Gu Xingyin looked at his expression and thought about his performance just now. He understood what was going on. She also had a serious expression as she looked at Qiao Fenghuan. All right, then I can also seriously tell you that I'm also a very serious person. Once I've set my mind on someone, it'll be for life. When he heard the words, for life, from her mouth, Qiao Fenghuan didn't know why, but his heart suddenly trembled. Gu Xingyin suddenly smiled. Whether you believe it or not, I've never had a boyfriend. You're the first man in my life that I've been moved by. She looked at Qiao Fenghuan. Perhaps, in this world, there really is fate between the past and the present. When I saw you, I felt an extra sense of familiarity. Qiao Yanyan. She never thought that the seemingly fresh and refined Sister Liqing would be such an experienced driver when it came to words of love. However, she remembered that her brother didn't seem to like this kind of glib tongue the most. She looked at Qiao Fenghuan with some worry, thinking that if he got angry, she would have to persuade him not to embarrass a girl. Then, when she saw Qiao Fenghuan clearly, she was going to be blinded by this smile. She, Qiao Yanyan, had lived for nearly 20 years. This was the first time she saw such a comfortable and carefree smile on her brother's face. Then, her brother, who had always cherished his words like gold and had no emotional intelligence at all, continued Gu Xingyin's words. What a coincidence. When I first saw you, I also felt an extra sense of familiarity. The two looked at each other and smiled. Qiao Yanyan, who was completely ignored by the two beside her, it was probably unnecessary for her to stay here. She silently glanced at the two people who seemed to like each other. Qiao Yanyan tactfully picked up the plate and stood up. She was just hungry and wanted to get something. She wasn't tortured. Qiao Yanyan didn't want to go back there, so she had to wander around the food area with a plate in her hand, which made the boss feel strange. He came over and asked her if there was any problem. Qiao Yanyan said awkwardly, "It's nothing. I'm just struggling with what to eat." Boss, it took him half an hour to choose what to eat. Sure enough, it was difficult to choose. Qiao Yanyan sighed in her heart when she recalled the boss's pitying eyes when she left. In today's world, there weren't many younger sisters as sensible as her. She had to have a good chat with her brother tonight about next month's allowance. Yanyan? Her brother's voice sounded. Qiao Yanyan hurriedly took a few things, put them on a plate, and walked over. The boss, who happened to turn around and see this scene, what kind of difficult disease was this? Qiao Fengluan looked at his younger sister. "I was wondering why you suddenly disappeared." Looking at the food on Qiao Yanyan's plate, he said earnestly, "You're a girl, so you shouldn't eat such." His gaze fell on Qiao Yanyan's mountain-like plate. His meaning was obvious. Qiao Yanyan, damn it, who am I doing this for? Chapter 1919. When Qiao Yanyan returned to her seat again, she was shocked to find that in just half an hour, the two of them had already confirmed their relationship. She bit the straw in her mouth and looked at the interaction between her brother and sister Luqing, who she had never touched before, with a complicated expression. To be honest, when the two of them sat together, they looked really harmonious. Moreover, if she didn't say it, no one would believe that today was the first time the two of them had met. Their interaction was too natural. Compared to a young couple who had just confirmed their relationship, in Qiao Yanyan's eyes, the two of them were more like an old couple who had lived together for countless years. The tacit understanding between them was simply enviable, but they weren't like a real old couple who had all their passion erased by the trivialities of life. Qiao Yanyan thought in a daze, perhaps, in this world, there really is such a thing as fate or previous life? Otherwise, how could she explain that her brother had no interest in women in the past? Of course, he didn't have any interest in men either. No matter how much the family worried, there was no way to make him fall in love with someone else. However, he only took one look at Sister Luqing and fell in love with her. It was as if his previous life was just waiting for her to appear. This seemed to be quite good. Qiao Yanyan thought silently. Gu Shengyin and Qiao Fengluan got along very well. In fact, even if this man didn't have any memories, he could always make her feel very determined in all aspects. However, since it was getting late, she said goodbye to the two after eating. Of course, when she left, the two of them already had their contact information in her phone. After watching Gu Shengyin walk into the neighborhood, Qiao Fengluan retracted his gaze. "Brother," Qiao Yanyan asked teasingly from the back seat, "how does it feel to be in love?" Qiao Fengluan knew that his sister was teasing him. He glanced at the rearview mirror and the corner of his mouth hooked up. "The feeling is very wonderful. A single girl like you won't understand." Qiao Yanyan. "My goddess sister Luqing, why are you so blind?" Gu Shengyin returned home in a good mood. She logged into the game as usual, and sure enough, there were several people asking her for guides. However, she didn't sell the video again. If she guessed correctly, after such a long time, the video she sold to those people would probably be released soon. If she sold it now, she would easily offend people. She opened the forum and skimmed through it. There wasn't any big news. Speaking of which, it was just as she had expected. After becoming famous, the number of people who came looking for her using the ID dark fragrance sleeves increased. In this way, her income was much higher than before. This could be considered as fulfilling one's wish. Gu Shengluo. She was lamenting. Suddenly, she received a private message. "Our swordsman, are you there? Look at the forum, you've been hacked." Gu Shengyin replied, "Yes, I'll go take a look now." She refreshed. There was a new post posted. It's a new post. Looking at the time when the post was posted, it had only been 2 minutes, but it had already become a hot post. There were already over, it was posted. It's a posted as she looked at the poster's ID. Okay, so it was her. The poster was an enchanting beauty. The post talked about what happened during the day. Chapter 1920. At first glance, that seemed to be what the post was talking about. Exceptional Enchanting used a very calm tone to talk about her experiences today. Doesn't it sound like there's nothing wrong with it? But in reality, this post didn't seem to have any problems at all. It didn't say anything about anyone bullying others, but after everyone finished reading it, their minds were filled with the image of Dark Fragrance, who had a sharp tongue, was overbearing, and was stingy and vicious in real life. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. Looks like Exceptional Enchanting's weakness hasn't been found out yet, otherwise, she wouldn't be so idle. She lazily scrolled down. There really were a lot of die-hard fans of the number one beauty. Gu Xingyin glanced over and saw that at least 60% of the posts were cursing her. Another 20% of the people on the floor were just there to watch the show. The remaining 20% were more rational players. But it was useless. These rational players were directly burned to ashes by the die-hard fans. Gu Xingyin didn't want to fight back in someone else's home ground. She directly logged out and used Dark Fragrance's ID to make a new post. The title was very simple and crude, Dark Fragrance Sleeve Whitewashing Post. The content was even more simple and crude. Today I met the Iron Blood Guild leader and the number one beauty Exceptional Enchanting, so we chatted for a bit. Of course, it wasn't a harmonious conversation. After all, everyone knows that I don't have a good relationship with Exceptional Enchanting. In response to the green tea smelling post next door, Exceptional Enchanting would like to make an explanation. I actually only said a few sentences. The main content is as follows. Number 1, Exceptional Enchanting isn't as pretty as in-game. Number 2, Exceptional Enchanting saw that my boyfriend was handsome and came to hit on him, but I rebuked her back. Number 3, she said bad things about me in front of my boyfriend and his sister, but I rebuked her back. Number 4, she's not eloquent and only knows how to call people sluts. In the end, she got angry and ran away. Number 5, in summary, I attached a link to the other party's post. Once she opened the post, it didn't take more than a few minutes for the post to be filled with comments. Tang Sect Pig Days, support Goddess Dark Fragrance. My goddess is simple and crude, green tea pretentious bitch get lost. I love enchanting, bah, what great god, what straightforward is all bullshit. Aren't you just jealous of our enchanting's beauty? You bully our alluring Rao because she doesn't know how to scold people, so you bully people. No matter how powerful your character is, it's still not enough. Enjoying the show, the person above is an idiot. Appraisal complete. Anyway, if there's a little slut who talks bad about me behind my back and tries to seduce my man, I'll teach her a lesson. Blossoming Banksia, finally, there's someone who's hooked up with this stunning green tea bitch. This bitch relied on her good looks to seduce male players in the game every day. She had the face of a female player. Onlookers, both sides have their own opinions. I'd better watch the show quietly. Gu Xingyin's private chat window suddenly popped up. It was Qili. Are you alright? His voice sounded a little cold. Gu Xingyin didn't care at all. Don't worry, I don't even care about the rank of enchanting beauty. Qili didn't say anything. However, a minute later, the black-clothed blade master appeared before Gu Xingyin. How can there be such an unreasonable woman in the world? Qili obviously also saw Enchanting Beauty's post. Of course, he also saw Gu Xingyin's post and was very satisfied with the title of boyfriend. Gu Xingyin shrugged. Who knows? How can we normal people understand the world of idiots? Chapter 1921. When Qili heard her description, he couldn't help but laugh. Gu Xingyin looked at him strangely. What's wrong? Qili looked at her and said, I just remembered that ever since I met you, I don't think I've ever seen you lose an argument. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows and smiled. That's right. If I wasn't good at talking, I would have been bullied to death since I was young. She was telling the truth. Qin Liqing was the typical type of person who wasn't loved by her parents. She lived with her parents since she was young. However, the only thing her parents could do for her was give her a place to live and food to eat. The rumors from the mouths of outsiders and the school were enough to drive a weak-willed girl crazy. Fortunately, Qin Liqing had a strong personality. After so many years, she had also trained her mouth to be strong. When Qili heard her casually talk about her childhood, his heart suddenly ached. He didn't know what she had experienced, but hearing her say this, he knew that it wasn't anything good. He felt bad for her. Gu Xingyin felt her body warm up. Qili walked over and hugged her. The game was really realistic. Even the human body temperature was simulated quite realistically. Qili gently wrapped his arms around her waist and said in a low voice, "You don't have to be so strong in the future. I'll stand in front of you." Gu Xingyin looked up and wanted to say something, but an angry voice sounded. Big Sis Dark Fragrance, majestic demonic rabbit's voice stopped abruptly when it saw the two of them hugging each other. What? What was going on? A smile quickly appeared on Majestic Presence's face. He laughed and said, "I suddenly remembered that I still have something to do." He wanted to leave, but Qili let go of his hand and said, "Come back." Since the captain had spoken, Majestic Presence Rabbit naturally didn't dare to leave. He turned around and looked at the two of them with a pair of clear eyes. His eyes were burning with the fire of gossip. Gu Xingyin, she had a feeling that Majestic Presence and Flirtatious Bunny was in such a hurry to leave not because of awkwardness, but because he couldn't wait to share this gossip with someone. Without waiting for the two to say anything, Majestic Presence Bewitching Rabbit said with a look of realization, "So, the boyfriend you mentioned in the post is Captain, Big Sis Dark Fragrance?" Gu Xingyin nodded. There was nothing to hide. Majestic Presence Seductive Bunny immediately exclaimed and opened its mouth to gossip. But Qili cruelly deprived him of his desire to gossip. He asked, "What business do you have with us?" Majestic Demonic Bunny reluctantly shut its mouth. Then, it finally remembered the serious matter. "It's like this, Sister Hidden Fragrance. I have a gay friend in Iron and Blood Lofty Sentiment. He said that Exceptional Enchanting has secretly contacted a large group of players. It said that they're going to stop you and teach you a lesson." Qili's eyes turned cold. Gu Xingyin calmed down a little. She frowned and asked, "Does Iron and Blood know about this?" She felt strange. Could it be that Iron and Blood really liked Exceptional Enchanting to that extent? After hearing her hint, he still allowed Hidden Fragrance to act. Majestic Presence Rabbit shook his head. "I don't think so. My gay friend said that it was Exceptional Enchanting who privately messaged them. He didn't hear anything from the guild." Chapter 1922. Gu Xingyin immediately knew what was going on after hearing Majestic Presence Seductive Rabbit's words. From the looks of it, this was more like a private action of the enchanting beauty. She thanked Majestic Presence Seductive Rabbit. "Thank you, Rabbit. I'll have a good chat with Iron Blood." Qili also said, "I'll have a good chat with Iron Blood's guild leader as well." Majestic Presence Seductive Rabbit waved his hand and laughed. "It's nothing, don't be so polite." After saying that, he looked at Gu Xingyin with sparkling eyes and said, "By the way, I have something to ask Sister Anxiang." Gu Xingyin smiled. "What is it? Is Stunning Alluring really not as pretty as she is in the game?" Gu Xingyin was speechless. Although she was surprised that Rabbit would care about this, she still answered seriously, "Yes, there's a big difference between her and the game. It's probably because she doesn't introduce herself, so no one can recognize her." Qili stood on his girlfriend's side. "I didn't recognize her." Majestic Presence and Bewitching Rabbit nodded in understanding. He patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, Sister Dark Fragrance. If Stunning Alluring dares to mess with you again, I'll contact a few friends and hack her to death." Gu Xingyin's eyes widened, as if he did not expect the usually well-behaved rabbit to say something like that. Qili, on the other hand, looked calm. He said to Gu Xingyin, "I haven't told you that Rabbit is a hacker." Majestic Presence Seductive Bunny laughed and waved at the two of them. "Then I won't disturb the two of you." Gu Xingyin blinked and said, "There are many hidden talents in your team." Qili said, "Rabbit may be young, but he's an absolute genius in computing. If you have any problems in the future, you can contact him." Gu Xingyin nodded. She didn't say that she had the system. Gu Shengyin privately messaged Iron Blood and told him about stunning alluring bribing guild members. After that, she said, Iron Blood and I parted on good terms, and I don't intend to be enemies with Iron Blood. However, if Iron Blood's members continue to provoke me, then you should know that I, Hidden Fragrance, am not the type of person to suffer a loss. As she expected, Iron Blood didn't know anything about this. He already had suspicions about the bewitching beauty in his heart, and now that he encountered her doing such a thing, he was naturally unhappy. Needless to say, Dark Fragrance flowing sleeve strength was becoming more and more powerful. He did not want to be enemies with her. He went to talk to stunning stunning and enchanting women had always been held in high regard by others. When had they ever been warned in such a way? The two of them fell out on the spot. Alluring, she didn't expect him. But she didn't expect him to just like that. In alluring was this time. No matter how much Iron Blood liked her, as a man, he still wanted face. Stunning alluring Rabbit's actions were completely trampling on his face. Gu Shengyin looked at the bar behind stunning alluring Rabbit's ID and sighed in boredom. Sure enough, she was a little princess who always had a smooth sailing life. She couldn't take any grievances. Qili looked at her with a smug smile and asked what had happened. Gu Shengyin sighed and said, I feel like I'm bullying a minor. Chapter 1923. Qili was speechless. He felt that if this continued, Dark Star's reputation as the most violent sorcerer in the server would spread. She would definitely be known as the most sharp-tongued person in the server. Gu Shengyin received another private message. It was from Tang Sect Pig. Sister Dark Fragrance, take a look at the World Channel. Gu Shengyin clicked on it, and the smile on her face disappeared. Qili saw that her expression wasn't good, so he also clicked on the World Channel. Enchanting Beauty was scolding people in the World Channel with her group of brainless fans. Enchanting Beauty, Dark Fragrance, you bitch. If you have the ability, let's face each other face to face. Why are you secretly ruining my reputation? I love Enchanting Beauty, that's right. Dark Fragrance is shameless. She's secretly sowing discord between us and Iron Blood. Enchanting Support Group, Dark Fragrance is shameless. Dark Fragrance is shameless. Dark Fragrance is shameless. Dark Fragrance is shameless. Bao Bao wants kiss kiss, Dark Fragrance is shameless. Dark Fragrance is shameless. Dark Fragrance is shameless. The back was completely flooded. These people are too much. Qili's expression was very ugly. Qili, some people shouldn't forget what education is just because they're on the internet. Gu Shengyin just happened to see this message. She turned around and looked at Qili helplessly. Why are you arguing with them? Qili said coldly, are you going to let them scold me? Gu Shengyin shook her head. Watch me. She bought a golden horn. To be honest, her heart ached when she bought it. She said to the golden horn, Enchanting Beauty, I, Dark Fragrance, will fight you in the open. Do you dare to come in half an hour? Enchanting Beauty, I, Dark Fragrance, will fight you in the open. Do you dare to come in half an hour? Enchanting Beauty, I, Dark Fragrance, will fight you in the open. Do you dare to come in half an hour? Enchanting Beauty, I, Dark Fragrance, will fight you in the open. Do you dare to come in half an hour? A cold female voice sounded over the entire server. The World Channel was silent. Fusheng Yiming Wuxin, ha 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 ha, the world is finally quiet. If you ask me, Master Hidden Fragrance, your face slapping came too quickly. Fusheng Yiming Wuxin, I said exceptional beauty and her lackeys, you guys slandered her for playing dirty. Now Hidden Fragrance is doing as you wish. Do you dare to respond to such an enchanting beauty? Hidden Fragrance sleeves, Wuxin, don't scare her. Everyone knows that she's a fragile mage. She's only good at talking. Will I eat melon? I like this kind of reversal. Stunning Enchanting looked at the World Channel and heard Dark Fragrance's words just now. She was so angry that she was trembling. However, Gu Shengyin was right. She did not dare to accept the challenge. In the current Sound of Dragon's Roar server, who didn't know that although Dark Fragrance Sleeves was a mage, her battle prowess was extremely abnormal? If she agreed to it, it would really be embarrassing. What she didn't know was that regardless of whether she agreed or not, Gu Xingyin did not plan on letting her go. Gu Xingyin said to the system, can you find some information about Stunning Enchanting's private life? Especially about her and her boyfriend. After all, last time, Gu Xingyin saw Stunning Enchanting and another strange man enter the residential area. The system replied, yes. Gu Xingyin nodded. When the time comes, find it and let me see. I'm going to give Iron Blood a gift. She could clearly see that Iron Blood was a man who cared about Face the most. Stunning Enchanting had made him lose Face, and the two of them had such an ambiguous relationship. If Iron Blood found out, Stunning Enchanting would have almost made herself a cuckold. Okay, host. Gu Xingyin casually glanced over and her eyes widened. Holy shit. She thought that this was just a simple threesome. She never thought that Stunning Enchanting would have such a rich love history. Please allow her to feel sorry for Iron Blood for a second. There were also the male players who thought of Stunning Enchanting as a goddess. They were actually so blind. She wondered what kind of reaction they would have when they saw the real Stunning Enchanting. Chapter 1924. Gu Xingyin didn't waste any time and had the system send an anonymous email to Iron Blood. For some things, it was best not to dirty one's hands if one could avoid dirtying one's hands. Iron Blood was leading Iron Blood Lofty Sentiments' elite team to clear an elite instance dungeon. Looking at the items dropped, his mood improved a lot. At this time, the game system notified him that he had received an anonymous email. Iron Blood was puzzled. He returned to the guild and opened it. In less than 2 minutes, his face was ashen. Stunning Enchanting. The character's face in the game didn't change, but Iron Blood's cold tone couldn't be concealed. When he thought of how he was so obedient and submissive to that woman a few days ago, Iron Blood couldn't control the anger in his heart. It was too disgusting. He expressionlessly stored all the information in his hollow brain, not saying anything. After Stunning Enchanting left Iron Blood Lofty Sentiments, her life wasn't bad. She soon joined another guild that was ranked higher than Iron Blood Lofty Sentiments. With her personality and appearance, she was doing very well. Occasionally, there would be posts about Stunning Enchanting on the forums. The general idea was that she was close to someone. When Iron Blood Lofty Sentiments saw those posts, they just shook their heads and sneered. Now wasn't the time. More than a month passed. Stunning Enchanting seemed to have established a relationship with the vice president of the guild. The vice president, who looked good and had a good family background, seemed to really like Stunning Enchanting. Not only did he buy all kinds of fireworks in the game to announce that the two were officially together, he even posted a message on the forums asking for blessings. Gu Xingyin naturally saw that post. The front page of the post was a picture of Stunning Enchanting and that man snuggling together. They were really in love. She silently calculated. At this time, Iron Blood should make a move, right? If Iron Blood didn't make a move at this time, she would have to do it herself. However, Iron Blood's thoughts were obviously similar to Gu Xingyin's. After seeing the high-profile post showing off their love, he laughed coldly. Bitch, I'll let you know what retribution is. The popularity of the PDA post hasn't gone down yet. The appearance of another post directly made the entire Huanma forum explode. It was a skinning post. Moreover, it was quite thorough, and the target was Stunning Enchanting, who was quite famous in the Sound of Dragon Roar server. The title of the post was, Exposing the Most Despicable and Disgusting Female Player in the Fantasy Magic Game. There wasn't a single word of nonsense in the post. From the very beginning, it directly exposed a series of private information such as Stunning Beauty's real name, age, personal photo, and so on. Then, the real revelations began. From the moment she entered the game and hooked up with the first male player until now, there was a timeline as proof. Along the way, all in all, it could be summed up in one sentence. The Stunning Beauty had never seriously dated a man before. She was dating at least 2 men at the same time during these 2 events. For example, right after she established her relationship with the vice president in the game, the post revealed that she had a boyfriend who had been in love with her for nearly 2 years in real life. That man even bought her a house. This was not the end. Under the premise that she had a boyfriend online and in real life, she actually maintained long-term contact with a married man. Chapter 1925. Not only was she two-timing, she was also a mistress that everyone wanted to beat up. Even her die-hard fans couldn't refute her in the comments section. Not only was the timeline of the post clear and organized, but there were also photos of all the beautiful and enchanting lovers that had been secretly taken. Oh right, there were also hotel records. It was an ironclad fact. This post was much more explosive than the previous post about how they were fighting and loving each other. How many players were there in the entire Huanma? The players didn't know. What they saw was that under this post, in less than half an hour, it had accumulated more than 4,000 comments. This wasn't the end. Almost as soon as it was refreshed, the popularity of the whole post was rising at an extremely terrifying speed. When Stunning Enchanting received the private message from the man, she was dumbfounded. The vice president didn't ask any real or fake questions. After scolding her in a private message, he directly blacklisted her. At the same time, the post in the forum that was full of public displays of affection was directly deleted. How much the vice president liked Stunning Enchanting before was how angry and disgusted he was now. He actually took a fancy to such a woman. At first, Stunning Enchanting didn't know anything. After being scolded for no reason, she was furious. But at the same time, she was very uneasy. She felt that something had happened that she couldn't control. Her premonition soon became true. After she saw the chat records on the World Channel, she finally knew that something big seemed to have happened on the forum. Stunning Enchanting breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. In her heart, being scolded on the forum was a normal thing. It wasn't a big deal. She casually clicked in to take a look. Her whole body froze. Slowly scrolling down, her face began to turn pale. Then, her whole hand began to tremble. Who was it? There were some things in here, some people, she had almost forgotten. Who was it that dared to reveal everything about him, no matter how big or small? Stunning Enchanting only felt that in an instant, all the strength in her body was sucked out. She finally understood why that man had such a reaction. A special notification sound rang out. Stunning Enchanting was stunned and logged out of the game. Her phone was ringing. It was her current boyfriend. Hello, darling. She calmed herself down and called sweetly. The man on the other end said something, and her expression suddenly became flustered. No, listen to me. It's all fake. Someone is deliberately slandering me. The one I love is you. The man on the other side seemed to be cursing loudly. The Stunning and Enchanting woman hung up the phone in a daze. It's over, it's really over this time. Illusion demons were too common. Although her boyfriend didn't play this game, many of his friends and family did. He had taken her to meet his parents. When they saw the posts on the forum, they naturally recognized her immediately. As long as one was not a fool, one would be able to determine whether the information on the paper was real or fake. The Stunning and Enchanting woman sat on the floor in a daze. After a while, her phone rang again. It was her boyfriend. A look of joy appeared on the beautiful woman's face. However, the other party only coldly told her to pack her things and get out of the house within 3 days. Chapter 1926. Only then did Exceptional Seductive remember something. This house was indeed bought by her boyfriend especially for her. When he bought it, he said that he would put the house under her name. But what did she say at that time? She loved him and was not with him for his money. In order to prove this, she was determined not to take the house. What she was interested in at that time was not a mere house, but her boyfriend's famous family background. What she wanted came true. Her boyfriend thought that she was the most pure and unworldly woman he had ever met in his life and treated her even better. If she could have thought of this day, she would never have said those words to capture her boyfriend's heart. This was a high-class apartment in Shanghai City. Now, her boyfriend was gone, and even the house was gone. She was about to be kicked out. Exceptional Seductive tried to call him one last time to explain, but the cold, busy tone came from the other end of the phone. He blacklisted her. Exceptional Seductive finally lost her last breath and her whole body went limp. The players soon discovered that Exceptional Seductive, who was once quite active, could no longer be seen in this game. Exceptional Seductive really could not stay in this server anymore. Her ID and appearance were too eye-catching. No matter where she appeared, there would be teasing from male players and ridiculing from female players. Seductive beauty, I'll pay 10,000 crystal coins for a night. Are you willing to accompany me? Exceptional Seductive, how can a woman like you still have the face to appear in this game? Her supporters had all run away, and many players who didn't like her started to PK her the moment they saw her. She had lost dozens of levels in 2 days and most of her equipment had been lost. She really could not play anymore. Do you guys think that Exceptional Seductive really left this game? Gu Xingyin lazily listened to her teammates' gossip. Toe-scratching hunk said, I don't know. Anyway, her reputation is completely ruined. Whether she will play or not, at least the ID Exceptional Seductive and that overly beautified face can never be used again. That's true, Luqin. A private message suddenly came. Gu Xingyin looked at Qi Li, who was standing beside him, in confusion. They were so close to each other, and there were no outsiders here. Why would they have a private chat? Qi Li looked at her with a gentle gaze. It's a good day in a few days. Can you accompany me to meet my parents? Gu Xingyin was stunned. She raised her head to look at the man in front of her. His face was calm, but his eyes were filled with a warm smile. Sure, she heard herself say with a smile. She and he didn't need to test each other so much anymore. She loved him, he loved her, they were together, a family. It was that simple. It was as if a beautiful dream had ended. Gu Xingyin opened his eyes and looked at the system that was floating in front of him. She felt the energy flowing into her body from the void, looked at the space in front of her, and exhaled. System, I plan to try walking around this space again. Although she vaguely felt that her current strength was not enough to conquer this space, she could not help but want to give it a try. The stronger she became, the stronger her perception of certain things in her heart. At the same time, she had a faint guess about the identity of her lover. Chapter 1927. System. Gu Xingyin called out to the system. Does the host have any questions? The system replied. Gu Xingyin looked at it and suddenly said, Tell me the truth, what is his identity? The system was speechless. Sorry, your authority is not enough, Gu Xingyin interrupted it, don't play dumb, I know. There are some things that you can't say even if you know. How about this, I'll ask you a question, and you answer yes or no. Before the system could say anything, she added, if you can't answer, then you can remain silent, okay? At this point, the system didn't reject him anymore. Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and asked, You and him are actually related, right? The system's body lit up and replied, yes. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up, his real identity is? The system did not say anything. Gu Xingyin said helplessly, Alright, I'll change the question. Are all the worlds that I'm doing missions in real? The system's white light flashed a few times, probably thinking about whether it could answer this question. Gu Xingyin waited for a moment, and finally the system replied, They are real. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. A person who could make her do missions in 3,000 worlds at will. She wanted to ask more, but the system suddenly said, The host can't ask any more questions, please continue to do missions. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She said gloomily, That's not what we said in the beginning. However, the system did not give her a chance to continue asking. A familiar dizziness came over, and when Gu Xingyin opened her eyes again, she was already in a completely unfamiliar place. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She turned her head to look at the system and said gloomily, System, you said you'd let me ask. What answered her was the system's calm and emotionless voice, The host is ready to start transmitting mission information. Gu Xingyin was speechless. You can do it, system. Now you're pretending to be serious. Only then did Gu Xingyin remember that she had not tried to walk through the spatial rift. Forget it. She was a little discouraged and thought for a moment. Since she couldn't walk over on her own, she might as well complete a few more quests first. She closed her eyes and began to receive the information transmitted by the system. In this world, the original body's name was Zhang Jojo. Her identity was considered to be the young lady of a small town. Of course, these so-called squires were only slightly better off than ordinary farmers. Their families barely had enough money to hire an old servant, and they could barely afford to work in the fields. Zhang Jojo's father, Zhang Zhenxing, had never been to school. His daughter's name, which sounded very scholarly, was something he had spent a lot of money to get an old scholar in the county to come up with. Logically speaking, Zhang Jojo was the only daughter in the family, and the Zhang family was considered a big family in this small town. She should not have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of her life. However, the problem lay in one place. When Zhang Jojo was only 4 years old, her mother passed away. Her father, Zhang Zhenxing, was an honest man. He was afraid that his younger daughter would suffer if he married a stepwife, so he didn't remarry. If he didn't remarry, he would not have a son. Putting aside the future of the Zhang family's business, Zhang Zhenxing was more worried that when he grew old, his daughter, Zhang Jojo, would have no one to rely on. If she was unfortunate enough to marry into an unkind family and got bullied, there would be no powerful relatives to support her. He thought for a while and came up with an idea. Chapter 1928. When Zhang Jojo was 6 years old, Zhang Zhenxing personally went to the county town and carefully selected a boy from the slave trader. Logically speaking, such children were worthless, but Zhang Zhenxing had his eyes on the fairest and cleverest child in this batch of children. Zhang Zhenxing spent 2 taels of silver to buy Zhang Fei. 2 taels of silver was not a small sum for the Zhang family. It was enough to cover the expenses of the Zhang family for 1 or 2 months. Zhang Fei was the name Zhang Zhenxing had given to the boy. Zhang Zhenxing raised Zhang Fei as his own son and provided him with food and shelter like his own daughter. He had the old servant call him young master. When the neighbors saw this, they all knew that Master Zhang was making plans for his daughter. Indeed, Zhang Zhenxing had bought Zhang Fei for him to be his future son-in-law. He thought that since they had grown up together and the Zhang family had raised the child, Zhang Fei would not mistreat Zhang Jojo in the future. He had even sent Zhang Fei to a private school and provided for him to study for more than 10 years. Zhang Fei was not stupid. Although the 2 sides had never explicitly said it, he knew that he was not a child of the Zhang family and what kind of status he had in the Zhang family. He wasn't really against it. Zhang Jojo, who had been called little sister since she was young, was very charming. When she looked at people with her misty eyes, she could melt people's hearts. She did not look like a girl that could be raised in a small town. Zhang Fei was even a little happy to have such a beautiful fiancée. This was supposed to be a beautiful story of a kind country gentleman taking care of a poor student and marrying a beautiful wife after the student obtained scholarly honors. However, no one had expected the following development. Zhang Fei was a talented person, but his talent wasn't that famous among students all over the country. However, no one had expected that this young man, who did not look very talented, would smoothly pass the provincial examination, the metropolitan examination, and finally the court examination. Although he did not make it into the top 3, Zhang Fei was successfully selected as a grand scholar. This was a grand scholar. Not to mention the small town that the Zhang family was in, even in the entire county, there might not be a single grand scholar in the imperial examination every year. Greatly bringing honor to the ancestors. Everyone said that the Zhang family had great luck in their previous life. They had casually bought a child and it turned out to be a grand scholar. Zhang Zhenxing was both surprised and happy. He felt that he had made the right move. In the future, Jojo would be the wife of a grand scholar. Who knows, she might even be given a title. However, he didn't think about whether Zhang Fei would be willing to find a wife who couldn't help him in his career. Zhang Fei's heart was big. After he became a jinshi, he didn't rush back to his hometown. Instead, he took the money that the Zhang family gave him and stayed in the capital. After a month had passed, Zhang Zhenxing, who had been waiting bitterly, finally received a letter from the capital. The letter was personally written by Zhang Fei. It meant that the mini marquis had taken a liking to him while he was in the capital and wanted him to be his son-in-law. The marquis power was old marquis's power of the marquis. What he meant was that his engagement with Zhang Jiuzhou had never been officially set in the first place. Now that things were like this, they could just pretend that nothing had happened. Chapter 1929. In any case, Zhang Zhenxing had lived for more than half his life and had some small businesses. Although he hadn't studied much, he was still very good at reading people's body language. Zhang Fei's letter was filled with a perfunctory tone. In other words, he was planning to stay in the capital and never come back. He was trying to distance himself from the Zhang clan completely. Zhang Zhenxing fainted on the spot from anger. Zhang Jiuzhou had always been spoiled by her father since she was young. She had developed an innocent personality and didn't know about the hardships of the world. When she found out that her father had fainted, she was frightened and sat by the bed crying. Fortunately, Zhang Zhenxing's body had always been good. He only fainted from anger and didn't have any major problems. He looked at his daughter with bitterness in his heart. Speaking of which, the only person who didn't know about the tacit engagement between Zhang Jiuzhou and Zhang Fei was Jiuzhou herself. Zhang Zhenxing liked to see his daughter's carefree appearance and didn't want these trivial matters to disturb her mind so early. Therefore, Zhang Jiuzhou didn't know about this matter at all. After coaxing his daughter, Zhang Zhenxing secretly sent people to the capital to inquire about the new grand scholar, Zhang Fei, and the mini marquis household. However, this investigation allowed the marquis household in the capital to discover some clues. After a few questions, Zhang Fei had no choice but to tell them about his relationship with the Zhang family. The eldest young miss of the mini marquis household, Chen Mingzhu, who had taken a fancy to Zhang Fei, was a vicious person. She appeared gentle and considerate as she spoke words of understanding, earning Zhang Fei's endless gratitude. In the blink of an eye, she found a few loyal servants of the marquis household and asked them to secretly find someone to go to the Zhang family's location. The Zhang family didn't know about this at all. One time, when Zhang Jiuzhou went out to buy medicine for her father, she directly covered her mouth and nose and fainted. The next morning, Zhang Jiuzhou was found lying naked on the road with bruises all over her body. Regardless of whether her body was clean or not, in everyone's eyes, this girl's life was ruined after being seen naked by so many people. After Zhang Jiuzhou returned home, she started to have a fever and spoke nonsense. Even after Zhang Zhenxing found a doctor and confirmed that she was still a virgin, her illness did not get better. She looked thinner and thinner day by day. Moreover, the rumors outside could not be suppressed at all. As a result, Zhang Jiuzhou propped herself up and went out to pour something. She heard the woman next door, who had always been kind, talking about her. Her words were full of disdain. After enduring for 2 months, Zhang Jiuzhou finally couldn't hold on any longer. She broke the teacup and ended her young life. When Zhang Zhenxing heard the news of his daughter's death, he spat out a mouthful of blood and was bedridden for several days. The father and daughter of the Zhang family, who had never done any evil in their lives, died in vain. The ungrateful Zhang Fei and Chen Mingzhu, who looked kind but had a wicked heart, got married smoothly and lived a prosperous life. Gu Xingyin watched this scene silently. Suddenly, she asked, Zhang Jiuzhou's background doesn't seem to fit the main character's identity. According to her past experience, the female lead of every world had a shocking identity. Just from this aspect, Zhang Jiuzhou seemed to be lacking something. The system replied, so, this world is actually a story of rebirth and revenge. Chapter 1930. Gu Xingyin repeated in confusion, reincarnation for revenge? The system nodded, yes, host. You came to Zhang Jiuzhou's body and changed the fate of the Zhang family before anything happened. You also successfully made Zhang Jiuzhou a winner in life. Gu Xingyin thought for a while. With Zhang Jiuzhou's identity as a woman and her family background, there were too many restrictions for her to walk the path of a main character. At this moment, the system added, oh right, "Host, I forgot to tell you. This world is considered a farming world." Gu Xingyin was stunned. "What do you mean?" She had a faint premonition in her heart. As expected, the system said, "In other words, places like the imperial court in the capital have nothing to do with you. If Zhang Jiujiu wants to get rich, she relies on farming?" Gu Xingyin asked. The system, the white light on its body flashed a few times before it finally continued. "It doesn't have to be limited to farming. You can also grow other things." Gu Xingyin. However, the key was still farming. She felt a little complicated at the moment, but also a little curious. To be honest, in every world, her host body could be said to be from a rich family. This was the first time she had encountered such a down-to-earth main character setting. The system thought that the host was unwilling. It comforted her. "Host, you don't have to worry too much. After all, Zhang Jiujiu's setting is a main character. She definitely won't be the same as ordinary people." As the main character, after Zhang Jiujiu was reincarnated, she obtained a very unexpected thing, the Spirit Spring Space. Spirit Spring Space? Gu Xingyin was confused. After that, the system explained to Gu Xingyin what exactly this thing was. Fortunately, Gu Xingyin had transmigrated to a few cultivation worlds and had some understanding of things like storage spaces and arcane realms. Even so, the more she knew, the more she was amazed by this space that Zhang Jiujiu possessed. It could store living things, and as the number of times it was used increased, there was also a spirit spring with extremely high spiritual energy within the space. Gu Xingyin confirmed it herself. Not only was the spiritual energy purity of this spiritual spring extremely high, more importantly, it was a living spring with an endless supply of spiritual liquid. Gu Xingyin tried to search for the source of this spiritual spring, but she simply could not find the source of this spiritual spring. Thinking about it, it made sense. To be able to have such means, it was definitely an immortal-level powerhouse. With Gu Xingyin's current situation, it was impossible for her to discover the mystery behind this. Gu Xingyin curiously asked the system if he could cultivate. Then, her suggestion was cruelly rejected by the system. Reason: it was impossible for immortal cultivators to exist in a low-martial ancient world. If Gu Xingyin became the first immortal cultivator, she would definitely be noticed by the laws of the world, which would increase the risk of being exposed. Of course, Gu Xingyin would not take the risk. At this moment, she stood in this space and looked at the spiritual spring that was curling up with white smoke. She looked around and slowly sat down. The system asked curiously, "Host, what are you doing?" Gu Xingyin reached out to feel the level of spiritual liquid in this spiritual spring and replied, "I'm thinking about what I should plant." System, on the other hand, Gu Xingyin's eyes suddenly lit up. "I've thought about it. Plant flowers." With this spiritual spring, she did not have to worry about not being able to grow anything. Since this was the case, compared to other plants that had a longer lifespan and were cheaper, planting flowers was undoubtedly an excellent choice. Chapter 1931. Gu Xingyin made up her mind and looked at the system. Extract skill. The system flashed with a white light. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have obtained the Goddess of Nature's Plant Affinity skill. Gu Xingyin was quite satisfied with this skill. It just so happened that she was planning to grow flowers. With this skill, she would be able to know what plants liked and disliked. It could be considered a double insurance. After communicating with the system, Gu Xingyin finally had time to look at her current situation. She was lying on a small couch in a room. Looking at the appearance of the room, it seemed to be a girl's boudoir. Obviously, this was the original Zhang Jiujiu's room. Gu Xingyin looked around. Although the room wasn't luxurious, it was clean and tidy. The furnishings were simple and elegant. Zhang Jiujiu had also attended a female private school. Her personality was also quite refined. Looking at the appearance of the room, her taste was not bad. Thinking about the time now. Zhang Fei was still at home, studying hard. Gu Xingyin knew from her memories that Zhang Fei's goal was to become a county official. If he was lucky enough to become a high scholar, it would be a pleasant surprise. As for becoming a high scholar, he didn't even dare to think about it. Father Zhang's plan was to wait until Zhang Fei became a county official. Then, he would bring up the marriage between him and his daughter. After all, Zhang Jojo was now of marriageable age. It was time to talk about marriage. No one knew that in just half a year, so many things would happen. Gu Xingyin slowly let out a sigh of relief. Zhang Fei wasn't a good person. Let's not talk about whether he had any romantic feelings for Zhang Jojo. Father Zhang bought him from a human trafficker and raised him well for 9 years. He even sent him to school. Even the money he spent on the exams was from years of savings that Father Zhang couldn't bear to use. With such kindness, after becoming a high scholar, he didn't even want to go home. Zhang Fei's thoughts were very clear. He was afraid that the Zhang family would cling on to him, so he simply wanted to cut off all contact with them. Gu Xingyin sneered. As long as you have a conscience, let's not talk about how you feel about Zhang Jojo. If you don't want to marry Zhang Jojo, just say it directly. However, the Zhang family's 9 years of upbringing were not in vain. No matter what, you have the honor of going back to see your old father who has been bitterly waiting for the results. He was clearly an ingrate that had not been raised properly. Gu Xingyin slowly rubbed her fingers and thought, if that's the case, I might as well think of a way to make Zhang Fei lose his life to take the Jinshi exam. She thought for a moment, tidied up her clothes, and walked out of the room. Just as she stepped out of the door, Gu Xingyin bumped into Zhang Fei who was walking towards her. She had a shocked expression on her face. She called out to her brother in a low voice and retreated to the side. Zhang Fei stopped in his tracks and saw the girl in the pink dress with her head slightly lowered. A trace of shock flashed across Zhang Fei's eyes. From his angle, he could see half of Gu Xingyin's lowered brows. Her thick eyelashes were slightly curled, like a trembling brush. Under her black hair was white and delicate skin, and half of her slender and beautiful neck could be seen. Zhang Fei's eyes flashed, and he said uncomfortably, Sister Jo, where are you going? He called her so intimately. Gu Xingyin's eyes turned cold. She raised her head and looked at Zhang Fei seriously. Brother, you and I are not blood-related siblings after all. It's better to call each other politely. Otherwise, people will gossip. Chapter 1932. When Zhang Fei heard this, he was startled. His first reaction was that Zhang Jojo knew something and was looking down on him. After all, in his current situation, if he really got together with Zhang Jojo, it would be considered climbing up the social ladder. But when he looked carefully at Zhang Jojo, he saw that his sister's eyes were as clear as ever, without any haze. Zhang Fei felt relieved. It seemed that Jojo was getting older and was starting to understand the boundaries between men and women. But the relationship between the two of them, Zhang Fei frowned and said, Jojo, you and I grew up together. Our relationship is comparable to that of biological siblings. Outsiders won't say anything. Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes, hiding the coldness in her eyes. Outsiders won't say anything? This world was harsh on women. With her and Zhang Fei's situation, it would be fine if they were together in the future. But if they weren't, the intimacy between the two of them over the years would become a topic of gossip. Naturally, this wouldn't affect Zhang Fei. But to Zhang Jojo, it would be a stain on her reputation that couldn't be washed away. Did Zhang Fei not know about this? Or did he think that she, Zhang Jojo, would be his in the future? Gu Xingyin looked up at him and said, I'm not as well-read as Big Brother, but I know that even if we're siblings, there's a principle that men and women don't eat together when they're 7 years old. Big Brother, you're about to take the provincial examination, so you should pay attention to your reputation. She knew what was most important to Zhang Fei. As expected, when the provincial examination was mentioned, Zhang Fei's expression immediately changed. He quickly said, Sister Jojo is right. Big Brother was too rash. Gu Xingyin smiled at him and didn't say anything else. She walked toward her father, Zhang Gensheng's room. Zhang Fei stood behind her and looked at her back in a daze. Thinking of Zhang Jiujiu's beautiful face, Zhang Fei felt even more excited. He didn't expect that the girl who had followed him around and called him big brother since young would become so outstanding. Thinking that such a beautiful girl would be his wife in the future, Zhang Fei couldn't help but feel a fire in his heart. Gu Xingyin obviously sensed Zhang Fei's gaze behind her. She furrowed her brows in disgust. With the help of the system, Zhang Fei's little tricks were all displayed in front of Gu Xingyin. For example, Zhang Fei was one of the more popular young masters in the town. He was considered to be well-read in the town. In the eyes of outsiders, he was the young master of the wealthy Zhang family. He was a rare candidate for a son-in-law. Zhang Fei often received shy and timid smiles from the girls. Occasionally, when he went out for a walk, he would receive a steaming hot bowl of tea from the tea maidens and handkerchiefs with a strong fragrance. As for Zhang Fei, even though he had guessed the relationship between him and Zhang Jiujiu, he did not avoid it at all. In fact, he even enjoyed it. Gu Xingyin had no doubt that even if Zhang Fei had married Zhang Jiujiu, he wouldn't have been a good match even if those things hadn't happened in the original plot. Thinking of this, Gu Xingyin arrived outside her father's room. Zhang Zhenxing was checking the account books. He owned a small clothing store in the town. The business was neither good nor bad. It was enough to support a family. Seeing his daughter come over, Zhang Zhenxing raised his head and put down the account books in his hands. "Jojo, what's the matter?" he asked with a smile. Chapter 1933. Gu Xingyin looked at Zhang Zhenxing. He was of medium height and had a thin face. He was wearing a green robe that was half new. Rather than a merchant, he looked more like a weak scholar. Gu Xingyin looked at her father's handsome face and understood who Zhang Jiujiu had inherited her good looks from. The father of this body was a handsome middle-aged uncle. It was no wonder that after Zhang Zhenxing passed the new year and had such a big daughter, matchmakers kept coming to the town to propose marriage. Gu Xingyin walked in front of her father and said, "Father, I went to the temple to burn incense a few days ago and picked up an ancient book on the way back. There were all kinds of ways to plant flowers in it. It was said that the flowers raised with those methods are more beautiful than ordinary flowers. I wanted to buy some seeds to try." Zhang Zhenxing asked doubtfully, "Why haven't I heard you mention it?" Gu Xingyin stuck out her tongue and said, "I was looking at it for fun. Who knew that the book would suddenly disappear the day before yesterday? I just remembered it today." Zhang Zhenxing didn't take it to heart. These ordinary flower seeds weren't too expensive and he had always cherished his only daughter. He immediately said, "I'll go to the shop in the afternoon and bring you some seeds when I come back." "What kind of flowers do you like?" Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and said, "Just buy some cheap ones. I'll just plant them for fun." Zhang Zhenxing nodded. Gu Xingyin didn't leave after saying this. She stood to the side and bit her lip. She suddenly asked, "Father, do you want me to marry brother Zhang Fei?" Zhang Zhenxing was stunned. He had always had this idea and he knew that Zhang Fei had seen it but had never told his daughter. He asked curiously, "Why are you suddenly asking this?" Gu Xingyin pulled on his sleeve and pouted. "I'm not stupid." Zhang Zhenxing thought that his daughter had grown up and had her own thoughts. He laughed and sighed. "Daddy is getting old. My Jojo needs someone reliable to take care of her." This was a tacit agreement. Gu Xingyin pouted. "But I don't want to marry brother Zhang Fei." Zhang Zhenxing was stunned and asked, "Why?" From his point of view, Zhang Fei was a very good candidate for a husband in this town. He was knowledgeable, good-looking, and polite. There were even many families who didn't know the inside story and sent matchmakers to propose marriage for him. Gu Xingyin said, "Your daughter has always treated brother Zhang Fei as her own brother, and brother Zhang Fei is very popular with the girls." The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Zhang Zhenxing frowned. "You're saying that Zhang Fei is very popular with the girls?" Gu Xingyin said with certainty, "Yes, many of my sisters like brother Zhang Fei. One of them even said that brother Zhang Fei accepted her handkerchief." She then explained, "It's not a personal item. It's just a towel used to wipe sweat. Even so, it was enough to attract Zhang Gensheng's attention. He took 2 deep breaths and suppressed the anger in his heart. He said to his daughter, "Jojo, it's been a bit hot recently. Don't go out if you don't have anything to do. Daddy is going to the shop." Gu Xingyi nodded obediently and walked out of the room. Zhang Gensheng called the old servant in the house, Uncle Yuan, with a cold face and asked him to inquire about something. Chapter 1934. This small town was only so big, so it wasn't difficult to ask around. When Zhang Gensheng returned home from the shop in the evening, Uncle Yuan also followed him home. Zhang Gensheng listened to Uncle Yuan's narration, and his face became gloomier and gloomier. Uncle Yuan had followed his master since he was young, and he also watched Zhang Jojo grow up. He didn't have a wife, so he naturally looked at Miss as if he was looking at his own daughter. After Uncle Yuan finished, he couldn't help but say, "Forgive this old servant for speaking out of turn, master, this young master Zhang Fei is really not a good match." They didn't know if they didn't ask, but once they asked around, they found out that Zhang Fei was actually such a person. Of course, Zhang Fei didn't do anything out of line, but he had a good relationship with many girls of the right age in this town. They were all men, so how could Zhang Gensheng not understand Zhang Fei? To be honest, if Zhang Fei was his own son, he wouldn't have any opinions at all. But Zhang Fei was the one he liked, and he wanted to be his daughter's son-in-law. This was a big problem. In this world, no father would want his daughter to marry a man who cherished the fairer sex. Zhang Gensheng said with some lingering fear, "Luckily, I thought of this today and asked you to ask around." Uncle Yuan stood at the side and didn't say anything. Zhang Gensheng thought for a while and made a decision. After all, he had never said his plans out loud. In 2 days, he would personally talk to Zhang Fei. Gu Xingyin didn't know what her father did, but she could guess that with Zhang Gensheng's love for his daughter, if he knew what kind of person Zhang Fei was, he would definitely not let her marry him. After the family finished dinner that day, Zhang Gensheng gave a small bag and a few flower pots to Gu Xingyin. Then, he called Zhang Fei to his room. "Fei, counting the days, you've been in our Zhang family for 10 years. Zhang Gensheng looked at the tall and handsome young man in front of him and felt a little emotional. Zhang Fei was a little confused, and he didn't know why Zhang Gensheng suddenly brought him here. But after hearing Zhang Gensheng's words, he had a guess in his heart. Could it be, he was inexplicably excited? Could it be that father was going to officially announce his marriage with sister Jojo? Thinking of this, he felt a little excited. Especially when he thought of the sister Jojo he had seen in the past few days. She was clearly still the same person, but no matter how he looked at her, he felt that she was becoming more and more beautiful. He looked at Zhang Gensheng and said emotionally, "If it weren't for father's kindness, I don't know what Zhang Fei would be in right now." When Zhang Gensheng heard this, he felt gratified. At least she knew how to be grateful. He nodded to himself, feeling that he had made a good decision. He opened his mouth and said, "I plan to arrange a few banquets in 2 days and invite the neighbors to officially adopt you. From now on, you are my son, Zhang Gensheng, and Jojo's elder brother. What do you think?" His words were like a bolt from the blue, jolting Zhang Fei awake from his beautiful dream. Adopted son? Why? This was different from what he knew. Shouldn't he be the son-in-law? Zhang Fei was confused and didn't reply to Zhang Gensheng. Zhang Gensheng frowned and asked, "What's wrong, Fei, Are you not satisfied with your father's arrangements?" Chapter 1935. Zhang Fei snapped out of his daze and opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. Was he supposed to say, "No, I don't want to be your son. I want to be your son-in-law"? Zhang Fei was sure that if he said such words, he would probably be chased away by his kind father with a broom. But, he really couldn't accept it. So what if he was adopted? He was still not his biological son. In the future, most of the Zhang family's things would still be left to Zhang Jojo. What could he get as an adopted son? He still had to support Zhang Gensheng in his old age. How good would it be if he was his son-in-law? The Zhang family only had one daughter. If Zhang Jojo married him with the entire Zhang family, the wealth and beauty would all be his. Why? Why was everything different from what he had expected? He had many things he wanted to say, but under Zhang Genqing's earnest gaze, Zhang Fei could only open his mouth and say with some reluctance, "Your son is just too happy." The matter was settled just like that. Zhang Genqing's expression softened when he saw this and said, "Then go have a good rest. The provincial examination is coming soon. Take care of your body." Zhang Fei, who was filled with melancholy, walked out the door and didn't notice Zhang Genqing's cold expression. Seeing Zhang Fei walk out of the room, Zhang Genqing's expression finally relaxed. As a businessman, he didn't miss the unwillingness on Zhang Fei's face after he said his plan. There was even a hint of resentment. Resentment? What was there to be resentment about? Zhang Genqing had nothing to say to Zhang Fei. If he hadn't bought him back then, who knew what Zhang Fei's situation would be like now? How could he have the days he had now? Zhang Genqing sighed. He never expected that he would make such a huge mistake in judging people his whole life. Fortunately, he had seen it clearly in time. Otherwise, Jojo, thinking of his daughter, he felt a lingering fear. He also silently thought that he had to check properly and find a good husband for Jojo. Since he had made up his mind, Zhang Genqing's actions were naturally very fast. He spent some money to buy a few tables of food and wine and personally invited many neighbors he had a good relationship with to his house. After this meal, everyone knew that Boss Zhang, who owned a clothing store, had adopted the child he had raised from a young age. This kind of thing, everyone was just watching for fun. They all praised Zhang Genqing for his kindness and said that he would be rewarded in the future. In the entire banquet, the most sullen person was Zhang Fei. Even though he was feeling extremely uncomfortable, he still had to pretend to be happy and grateful on the surface. After all, he was only 16 years old and was far from being able to hide his emotions. However, many people could already tell that something was amiss. This newly promoted young Master Zhang didn't seem to be too happy. Therefore, after the banquet was over, a few neighbors who had a good relationship with Zhang Genqing secretly mentioned it to him. Zhang Genqing remembered the kindness of these people in his heart. On the surface, he could only say that Zhang Fei was under a lot of pressure because the provincial examination was coming up. But the impression he had of Zhang Fei in his heart was much worse. Gu Xingyin was the happiest. Although she knew that her father wouldn't sit idly by, she didn't expect him to act so quickly and resolve the matter between her and Zhang Fei in just a few days. Now that Zhang Fei had offered tea and kowtow to his father in front of so many people, he was a proper member of the Zhang family. When others thought of Zhang Fei and Zhang Jojo, they would only think of them as siblings and wouldn't associate them with anything else. Then, the next thing she needed to do was to let her good brother get a good result in the examination. Chapter 1936. Over the next few days, Gu Xingyin grew flowers every day and waited for Zhang Fei to take the provincial examination. Zhang Genqing brought her rose seeds. He thought that a young girl like his daughter would probably like pink and big flowers like roses. Gu Xingyin did not care about what kind of flower it was. She only wanted to prove her skills in growing flowers in front of Zhang Genqing. Every day, she scooped some water from the spirit spring in her space and put it into a big bucket of clear water. Gu Xingyin had done a few experiments. This spirit spring water could be directly taken orally. However, the spirit energy in the spirit spring water was too dense. An ordinary person's body could not withstand it and had to be mixed with clear water before taking it. It was the same for flowers and plants. Very soon, she saw results. Very soon, tender green sprouts sprouted from the small flower pots. Gu Xingyin looked at the growth speed of these roses. It seemed to be much faster than ordinary roses. Fortunately, this speed was only a little faster and was not too ridiculous. She did not need to waste time looking for an excuse. Zhang Genqing's mood was very good recently. Jojo was becoming more and more sensible. Recently, after lunch, she would personally brew a cup of tea for him. He did not know if it was a psychological effect, but Zhang Genqing always felt that the tea in his daughter's hands tasted sweeter and more fragrant. Moreover, during this period of time, he always felt that his spirit was exceptionally good. His body seemed to be filled with abundant energy. One day, when he woke up early to tidy up his clothes, Zhang Zhenxing even found that the few strands of silver that had faintly appeared on his temples due to days of hard work had disappeared. If there was an abnormality, then it was a demon. Zhang Zhenxing felt a little uneasy in his heart. That day, he carefully instructed the workers in the shop, and worriedly went to find a famous old doctor in the town to have a look. It was said that the old doctor's ancestor was an imperial doctor in the capital. When he was young, he was also a very famous doctor. In his later years, he moved to this quiet town to live out his remaining years. Of course, no one knew whether this was true or not, but it was true that the old doctor was highly skilled. If anyone in the town had a headache or fever, he only needed to prescribe some medicine, and it was guaranteed that the illness would be cured the next day. At this moment, the old doctor narrowed his eyes and placed one hand on Zhang Zhenxing's pulse, his brows tightly knitted together. Seeing this, Zhang Zhenxing felt even more uncertain. After a long time, the old doctor finally released his hand and looked at Zhang Zhenxing with a strange look in his eyes. Zhang Zhenxing looked at the doctor and asked cautiously, "Doctor, do I have some kind of incurable disease?" The old doctor rolled his eyes at him and said angrily, "Yes, that's right. I think you have a very serious illness." Zhang Zhenxing was shocked. He hurriedly asked, "Then, can the doctor treat him?" The old doctor said unhurriedly, "I see that your body is so strong that you can kill a cow, but your brain might be seriously ill." Zhang Zhenxing, wait a minute. He quickly understood the meaning behind his boss's words. He asked in surprise, "So, doctor, I'm actually not sick?" The old doctor said, "Not only are you not sick, I see that your body is better than many of the young people in town." Zhang Zhenxing frowned. He knew his own body well. All these years, he had been busy with the matters of the shop and was somewhat exhausted. Although there would not be any major problems, it was inevitable that he would be somewhat weak. Why did the old doctor say that there was no problem at all? Chapter 1937. He told the old doctor about his recent changes. The old doctor pondered for a moment. "Did you eat any nourishing herbs recently?" After saying that, he shook his head. How could there be something with such an effect in this small town? Even if there was, it wasn't something an ordinary businessman like Zhang Zhenxing could have. Sure enough, Zhang Zhenxing quickly denied it. "Don't joke around. I'm just a small businessman. How could I have the spare money to buy some nourishing herbs?" This topic was left unsettled. Zhang Zhenxing was on tenterhooks for a period of time. When he finally confirmed that his body had returned to a good state, he was finally relieved. This was a good thing. Gu Xingyin saw the changes in her father these days. Looking at Zhang Zhenxing's anxious appearance, she wanted to say something, but she couldn't say anything. Say that his changes were related to her? How would she explain what happened later? It was best that no one else in this world knew about the spatial spirit spring. Such an existence was enough to attract countless people. With the Zhang family's ability, there was no way to protect it. When the time came, only destruction awaited the Zhang family. Fortunately, Zhang Zhenxing didn't care about it after a period of hesitation. Gu Xingyin was also relieved. She got up and looked at the small pots in front of her window. The green seedlings inside had already grown more than half a foot tall. The whole plant looked green and glistening. Even if it didn't even have a bud now, it was still very pleasing to look at. Even Zhang Zhenxing had seen it once and had to admit that his daughter did a good job of raising this flower. Gu Xingyin couldn't help laughing. How could it not be good? She used the spirit spring water to water it every few days and had to listen to their opinions. How much to water or how little to water was the most suitable? She looked at these small seedlings and silently said in her heart, "You have to work hard. Whether or not you can complete the task in the future depends on your performance." And at this time, the provincial examination was finally about to begin. The day before the provincial examination, Zhang Zhenxing didn't even go to the shop. He personally bought a lot of ingredients and asked Mrs. Lin at home to make a table of good dishes. Originally, there was no cook at home. Everything was done by Uncle Yuan. Later on, Zhang Fei was studying and had to take part in the imperial examinations. His daughter had slowly grown up. Zhang Zhenxing felt that he could no longer eat like this, so he hired a cook. This meal could be considered a pleasant one. Although Zhang Zhenxing didn't have a good impression of Zhang Fei, he still wished him well. After dinner, everyone returned to their rooms. Gu Xingyin watched from afar as the lights in Zhang Fei's room were turned off. This was very rare. In the past, the lights in Zhang Fei's room would stay on until midnight. Gu Xingyin glanced in that direction and the corners of his lips curled into a cold smile. Zhang Fei purposely didn't study today because he wanted to have a good night's rest so that he could conserve his energy for tomorrow's exam. Before he fell asleep, he was still in a daze, thinking that he had to pass the county scholar examination. It would be best if he was lucky enough to pass the high scholar examination. At that time, he would make Zhang Zhenxing regret not marrying his daughter to him. He slowly fell asleep. Then, the next day, Zhang Fei woke up with a start. He only felt that he seemed to have had an extremely frightening dream the entire night. But now, if you asked him to think about what he had dreamed of, he couldn't say. Only the extreme dark and oppressive feeling of the dream still remained in his heart. Chapter 1938. Zhang Fei felt a little dizzy in his head and was not very clear-headed. But looking at the time, it was already dawn. It was time for him to get up. In the morning, the whole family got up very early. Zhang Zhenxing saw that his face was still a little worried. Zhang Fei forced a smile and said that he was fine. With him going to participate in the provincial examination in this state, the results could be imagined. Zhang Fei went home with a sour face. Even when Gu Xingyin went to greet him, he only replied coldly. After 2 days, Gu Xingyin found out that Zhang Fei had been absent-minded in the examination room and had not even finished answering the paper. Time slowly passed in Gu Xingyin's leisure and Zhang Fei's anxiety. When the results of the provincial examination came out, Gu Xingyin's pots of roses finally bloomed for the first time. It was really beautiful. Gu Xingyin could not help but carefully look at her own work. This rose was about a foot tall. Its leaves were dense and green. The leaves were so green that they seemed to be glowing. Looking at them made one feel refreshed. And on those leaves, there were several pink flower buds. One of them had already bloomed. The pink petals spread out in layers. From the center of the deep pink, they slowly extended outwards. When they reached the outermost area, there was only a bit of white left. It was like a layer of sparkling fluorescent powder. There were wisps of a delicate fragrance in the room. It was refreshing but not greasy. It was very comfortable. Gu Xingyin was sure that if this pot of flowers was taken out and said that it was the most common type of rose, no one would believe it. When it was time for dinner, Zhang Fei did not come out. Uncle Yuan said that the young master was sulking alone in the room. Zhang Zhenxing asked for food to be left for him. The father and daughter had dinner together. The work and rest in the small town was early. After dinner, the sky had not yet turned dark. Gu Xingyin mysteriously said that she wanted to show Zhang Zhenxing something. Zhang Zhenxing looked at his daughter's treasured look and found it funny. He followed her very cooperatively. Then, he saw the pots of flowers neatly placed on the windowsill. Zhang Zhenxing was stunned. He looked at Gu Xingyin in disbelief. "Are these the rose seeds I bought for you?" Gu Xingyin nodded with a smile. Zhang Zhenxing was puzzled. Could it be that the boss lost his mind and sold me some precious seed as an ordinary seed? But even he didn't believe what he said. Everyone had known the auntie who sold flowers in town for many years. She was also in the business of selling ordinary flowers. That was because no one in this town would buy such expensive flowers. Zhang Zhenxing looked at his daughter. He didn't expect that his daughter, who he thought was just for fun, would actually be such a good thing. After all, Zhang Zhenxing was a businessman. In a short moment, he came up with an excellent way out in his mind. If his daughter really had this ability, with such a skilled companion, he didn't have to worry that his daughter would have no one to rely on after he left. After thinking for a while, he asked, Jojo, if I let you raise other flowers, can you raise them like this? When Gu Xingyin heard this, she knew that her father was thinking long-term. She quickly said, yes, I can raise any kind of flower. Zhang Zhenxing nodded and said, you should continue to take care of these plants. Tomorrow, father will buy some seeds. You should take care of them for a while. When the time comes, I'll go to the county to take a look. It's said that those rich families love to raise these plants. Gu Xingyin let out a long sigh of relief. Having a father who knew how to do things could really save her a lot of trouble. Ahem, there's still one more chapter to go. Chapter 1939. Zhang Fei felt that things were not going well for him. He didn't know when it started, but he felt that everything was wrong. It was as if everything was going against him. Ever since he failed in the provincial examination, he had locked himself in his room and hadn't gone out for a few days. Some of his classmates in town had passed the county examination and invited him to a gathering, but he refused. Others didn't say it, but they all despised him for being petty in their hearts. Zhang Zhenxing originally thought that it was because he had suffered a blow and was feeling uncomfortable. It was normal for him to be depressed in his room for a few days. But he didn't expect that after a few days, Zhang Fei still couldn't come out. Zhang Zhenxing was a bit disappointed in him. He didn't expect Zhang Fei to be such an irresponsible person. So what if he failed once? At worst, he could start all over again. He personally went to Zhang Fei's room and saw him sitting at the table with a crazed expression. The floor was covered in ink and waste paper. Zhang Gensheng's original anger became somewhat unbearable. After all, he was only a teenager. He sighed and sat down, personally chatting with Zhang Fei. As they spoke, Zhang Zhenxing suddenly thought of something. Right, you know the Zhang family in town, right? Their family is in the rice business. Boss Zhang sent someone to ask me some things. Father wants to ask you, what do you think of the Zhang family's young miss? Zhang Fei came back to his senses. His heart was filled with negative emotions. When he heard Zhang Gensheng's words, the first thing that came to his mind was that Zhang Zhenxing thought he was useless and wanted him to quickly start a family. He had seen the Zhang family's young miss before. She was a delicate and pretty daughter of a humble family. Compared to Jiu Mei, she was far inferior. Zhang Fei's gaze turned cold. He said softly, I don't want to start a family so early. I still want to try. I can't accept it. Zhang Zhenxing didn't plan on directly agreeing. Seeing that he wasn't willing, he didn't say anything. He stood up and patted Zhang Fei's shoulder. You are still young. There will be many opportunities in the future. It doesn't matter if you fail once. Zhang Fei watched him walk out of the room in a daze. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a cold smile. You want to get rid of me? No way. Thinking of Zhang Jiujiu's beautiful face, Zhang Fei suddenly had a vicious plan. Gu Xingyin, who was thinking about getting rich as soon as possible, didn't realize that Zhang Fei was feeling restless again. She sighed with some worry, feeling that she still had a long way to go. Depending on selling flowers to reach the peak of life, no matter how she thought about it, it was a very difficult thing. Moreover, the target of the mission was the first miss of the Marquis's mansion. Although the Mingyi Marquis's mansion was only an empty shell, it was still a first-rank noble title. Now that he thought about it, the distance between him and her was really quite far. The next day, Zhang Fei woke up early, tidied himself up, and changed into a new set of clothes. Looking at him now, he had become that handsome young man again. Just by looking at him carefully, one could see the gloominess in his eyes that he couldn't hide. Gu Xingyin bumped into Zhang Fei the moment she stepped out of the door. She stopped in her tracks and greeted Zhang Fei, "Good morning, big brother." Zhang Fei looked at her carefully and said with a smile, "I haven't seen you for a few days. Little sister Jojo has become prettier again." Gu Xingyin frowned. Even if they were siblings, these words were too rash. This Zhang Fei, what was he thinking? Chapter 1940. To be honest, although Zhang Fei's words contained a trace of flattery, Most of what he said was the truth. He felt that after not seeing his sister for a few days, she seemed to have become more beautiful. It was indeed so. For the past few days, Gu Shengyin had been adding a drop of spirit spring water to his drinking water every day. He would also use some when he bathed. It was not obvious at first, but after a few days, there were obvious changes in his body. For example, her originally young and fair skin had become more delicate and lustrous. Some small flaws that she had not noticed before had all disappeared. Her complexion was much better than before. At this moment, in Zhang Fei's eyes, he felt that Zhang Jiuzhou's entire body seemed to be glowing as she stood in front of him. He already knew that his sister was beautiful, but this was the first time he realized that Zhang Jiuzhou was actually this beautiful. A trace of infatuation flashed through Zhang Fei's eyes, and his face became even more tender. He looked gently at Gu Shengyin and said, "Sister Jiuzhou, I heard that there is a flower forest outside the town with beautiful scenery. Would you like to go with me and have some fun?" Gu Shengyin frowned. She felt that Zhang Fei's gaze was glued to her body, and it made her feel extremely uncomfortable. He actually still did not give up. Gu Shengyin took a step back and said, "The sun is a little bright outside, and I don't have the patience to go out. Brother, why don't you find a few like-minded friends to go with you?" This was a rejection. Zhang Fei's face turned cold when he heard this. However, he still said gently, "That's right. Sister Jiuzhou is such a beautiful and delicate girl. It won't be good if you get sunburned." Gu Shengyin's face fell. She finally understood that Zhang Fei really did not give up. Was this something that an elder brother should say to his sister? She said in a low voice, "Brother is a scholar. You should know that there is a difference between men and women. This kind of words is not suitable for you to say to your sister." Zhang Fei saw that her pink face was angry, and her face was as cold as snow. However, it had a different kind of charm, and he was even more captivated. He said, "Sister Jiuzhou, can't you see my sincerity? I've never treated you like a brother or sister. You should have been mine from the start." "Shut up!" Gu Shengyin snapped. She never thought that Zhang Fei would actually be so bold as to directly say such words. She angrily said, "Could it be that elder brother lost his mind in the exam? How could he say such absurd words? Now that you've been taken in as an adopted son by father, you're a proper member of the Zhang family. How can you speak such incoherent words to your own sister?" She turned around and left. Zhang Fei also reacted abruptly. While blaming himself for being impulsive, he subconsciously chased after Gu Shengyin in an attempt to stop her. However, he did not expect that Zhang Jiuzhou, who looked delicate and weak, would be so fast. Panicking, he quickly ran over to pull her away. Gu Shengyin's sharp eyes noticed the pool at the side of the corridor. Her footsteps suddenly slowed down, as if she was exhausted. Zhang Fei took the opportunity to grab her sleeve. Then, Gu Shengyin pulled her hand away. He did not see her move, but Zhang Fei felt a strong force hit somewhere on his waist. His body went limp, and he was dragged back by inertia. The ice-cold water poured down from the top of his head, submerging his entire body. Chapter 1941. Gu Shengyin stood by the pillar and quietly watched Zhang Fei struggle in the water. Zhang Fei didn't know how to swim, so she had to teach him a lesson. She pretended to be frightened and said in a shrill voice, brother, are you okay? Come up quickly." Zhang Fei, who was struggling in the water, was speechless. He actually wanted to say, "If I could come up, would I need you to tell me? Don't just scream, go call for help." But the moment he opened his mouth, cold water poured into his nose and mouth, and he couldn't speak at all. Gu Shengyin panicked and screamed for a while before she finally remembered that there was someone else in the residence. She let out an "ah" and said anxiously, "Uncle Yuan is in the room, I'll go call for help." She then turned and ran away. Zhang Fei was speechless. Gu Shengyin leisurely walked to the west wing where Uncle Yuan was. He even took the time to take a look at the roses he was raising. She estimated that it was about time and screamed, Uncle Yuan, brother fell into the water." By the time Uncle Yuan scooped Zhang Fei up, he was already somewhat unconscious. Gu Xingyin watched coldly. He definitely wouldn't die, but he would definitely suffer. Sure enough, after the doctor examined him, he said, "It's nothing serious, but the patient might have been frightened and infected with cold air, so he needs to rest in bed." That night, Zhang Fei started to have a fever. Zhang Zhenxing only returned home at night. When he heard that Zhang Fei had fallen into the water, he went to take a look at him with a worried expression. After all, he had raised a child for 9 years. How could he not have any feelings for him? When he returned to the house, he found his daughter sitting there. "Jojo?" Zhang Zhenxing shouted in surprise. Normally, if there was nothing going on, his daughter wouldn't specially wait for him. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and suddenly said, "I was the one who pushed you into the pool." Zhang Zhenxing's eyes widened. "Jojo, you..." He looked at Gu Xingyin for a long time, and his tense expression suddenly relaxed. "Is there a special reason?" Hearing this, Gu Xingyin felt warmth in her heart. Zhang Zhenxing still believed in his daughter. He didn't blame her immediately. Instead, he asked himself why. Her eyes reddened, and she looked at her father as if she had been wronged. "Brother," she took a deep breath and told him what had happened during the day. "What did you say?" Zhang Zhenxing had just sat down and was about to take a sip of tea when he heard that. He immediately stood up. "That bastard." Zhang Zhenxing looked at his daughter nervously. "Is Jojo all right?" Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I struggled, and somehow, he fell into the water." Zhang Zhenxing's expression softened when he heard that his daughter was fine. "That's good. This has nothing to do with Jojo." He said to Gu Xingyin, "Jojo, don't be afraid. I'll talk to your elder brother." Gu Xingyin nodded obediently. She knew that if she was a timid girl, she might feel scared and ashamed and directly hide it. However, this method was useless except for increasing the arrogance of people like Zhang Fei. Gu Xingyin returned to her house under Zhang Zhenxing's constant concern. She didn't see Zhang Fei again for a long time. She only found out after asking Zhang Zhenxing. It turned out that Zhang Fei had been recuperating. After he recovered, Zhang Zhenxing found a reason to send him out. Chapter 1942. This reason was a little far-fetched. It was said that an elder of the Zhang family was critically ill, and Zhang Zhenxing had asked Zhang Fei to visit him. In fact, Zhang Zhenxing's family had almost nothing to do with the so-called Zhang family. That elder's health was not good, and a branch family like Zhang Zhenxing did not need to do anything. It was hard for Zhang Zhenxing to finally think of this matter after putting in so much effort. The Zhang family's main family was in a city far away in the north. Gu Xingyin calculated. Just the journey alone would take Zhang Fei a month or 2. In addition, there would be a delay when he reached that place. As it turned out, she would not be able to see this annoying fellow for a long time. Gu Xingyin was in a good mood. The flowers and plants under her hands seemed to feel their master's mood, and all of them became brighter. Another month passed. The more than 10 pots of plants in Gu Xingyin's courtyard had all bloomed. Zhang Zhenxing was becoming more and more attentive to these things. Recently, he came every day to check on the situation. One day, after he returned from the shop, he said to Gu Xingyin, "Jojo, I'll personally hire a car tomorrow to carry your flowers to the county. I'll ask Uncle Yuan to stay at home. Be careful." Gu Xingyin nodded. "Father, don't worry. I'll be fine at home. You, on the other hand, have to be careful along the way." Zhang Zhenxing smiled. The next day, he set off. Gu Xingyin waited at home. On the 5th day, Zhang Zhenxing returned. Gu Xingyin went out to welcome him. Seeing the relaxed look on his face, she knew that the result was good. Sure enough, after closing the door, Zhang Zhenxing no longer hid the smile on his face. He took out a money bag from his chest and poured out the silver in the palm of his hand. "There are 40 taels of silver here." Zhang Zhenxing's eyes seemed to be shining. This time, there were a total of 15 pots of flowers. He had just pulled them to the market when someone came over to ask for the price. Zhang Zhenxing placed his flowers in that direction. Compared to the flowers in the hands of the peddlers, the flowers in the hands of the peddlers were simply too shabby. Fortunately, Zhang Zhen was cautious and had inquired about the price beforehand. In the end, he quoted a price, which was 2 taels of silver per basin. There were a few basins that were extra nourished, so they were even more expensive. This price, compared to this kind of ordinary flower, was completely sky-high. It had to be known that other flower sellers, such as roses, could choose from 2 pots in this county town for 1 or 2 taels of silver. His flowers were 4 times more expensive than others. Zhang Zhenxing had his own thoughts. He knew that in this county town, those who had the time to buy flowers would definitely not lack the money. If he really wanted to develop here in the future, he had to make a good opening. He was absolutely right. He put the flowers out in the morning, and they were all sold out before the sun went down. Zhang Zhenxing knew in his heart that he would definitely be noticed by someone with ulterior motives. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he didn't even have time to rest after selling his things. He hurriedly drove back home. His mood was very agitated along the way. 40 taels of silver. He could only save that much money by running a shop for a year. His daughter only raised a few pots of flowers. The price of these pots of flowers added together was not even worth 1 tael of silver. Jojo, father wants to discuss something with you. Chapter 1943. When Gu Xingyin heard her father's plan, she sighed in admiration. It turned out that Zhang Zhenxing was talking to her about the matter of raising flowers. There was a huge business opportunity in this. Zhang Zhenxing's main idea was that they could go to the market and buy more seeds, divided into ordinary and rare seeds. They could try to set up a shop in the county and see the results. Zhang Zhenxing could see clearly that selling flowers in this town was not feasible. No matter how good the things were, not many people had the time and money to buy them. However, it was different in the county. He rambled on, and the general idea was that they would go to the high-end market in the future and sell flowers to those rich families. They could ask for a higher price and they would not need to compete with the ordinary vendors for the market. Gu Xingyin nodded continuously. There's one more thing. Zhang Zhenxing suddenly said. I've asked around. In Yun County, the highest position is the county magistrate and the aristocratic Li family, who has been here for a few generations. The county magistrate is the parent official. It is said that the Li family has several officials in the imperial court. They cannot be ignored. I went to buy a few seedlings, one of which is an orchid and one of which is an 18 scholar. Take good care of them. When the time comes, use them to explore the road. When Zhang Zhenxing said this, he felt a little heartache. These few seedlings cost him a lot of money. Gu Xingyin nodded. She was impressed by her father's thoughtfulness. They had no roots in Yin County. The tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. Being able to get the care of the local dignitaries was the foundation of their survival. Zhang Zhenxing gave some flower seeds to his daughter. Other than the 2 special potted plants, the rest were common plants in the market. They had a short planting cycle. Thinking about the use of the 2 potted plants, Gu Xingyin sighed and used 120% of her energy to take care of them. Fortunately, under the water of the spiritual spring, these plants not only grew well, but also grew at a very fast speed. 2 months later, Gu Xingyin's small courtyard was full of blooming flowers of various colors. The fragrance was pleasant, and many colorful butterflies were attracted to them. Zhang Zhenxing looked at the 2 pots of flowers given to him by Gu Xingyin with astonishment. He was a businessman, and after so many years, his eyesight had become sharp. Naturally, he could see that these 2 pots of flowers, which were originally not considered precious, had become completely different in his daughter's hands. As for the purpose of this trip, his confidence had increased from 70% to 90%. Zhang Zhenxing once again set foot on the road to Yun County. He first went to the Li family because the county magistrate of Yun County was said to be a disciple of one of the old masters of the Li family. In front of the Li family's old madam, it was said that the magistrate of the county also acted like a junior. At the same time, in the Li family, Li Jun, the eldest son of the second branch of the Li family, was one of the top young masters in Yin County. He was respectfully following behind a man in purple. That purple-robed man's face was incomparably handsome, and his entire body emitted an imposing aura. He could be considered to be a gentleman, and when Li Jun stood in front of him, the difference in status was immediately apparent. The man's expression seemed cold, but upon closer inspection, one could see a trace of impatience between his eyebrows. Young Master Qi, this is our Li family's, The man seemed to have sensed something and walked towards a certain direction. Li Jun was stunned for a moment, but he reacted and hurriedly followed. The purple-robed man walked directly in front of a servant holding a pot of flowers. That servant was frightened by his imposing aura and quickly knelt down. The purple-robed man ignored him and only asked in a low voice, "This flower, where did it come from?" He was pointing at the pink rose in the servant's arms. Chapter 1944. The servant was stunned and said with a trembling voice, "This is a pot of roses that third miss bought a few days ago." Before he could finish, the purple-robed man had already lowered his body. He bent down and casually picked a pink rose. He put it at the tip of his nose and sniffed it lightly. A slight smile appeared on his face. Li Jun, who was following behind him, felt strange. This young Master Qi's identity was quite shocking. It was a surprise that he would come to the Li family this time. Due to his age, the elders in the family had arranged the important task of accompanying him. 2 days had passed. Although this person's etiquette was perfect on the surface, his words and actions did not have the slightest intention of getting close to the Li family. Speaking of which, just now, it was the first time Li Jun had seen this young Master Qi smile in a long time. He looked curiously at the rose. Other than the leaves being greener and the flowers being bigger, there was nothing special about it. The purple-robed man held the flower in one hand and looked behind him. There were 2 servants behind him, each holding a pot of roses in their hands. From the looks of it, they came from the same place as the ones in front. He walked over and looked at each of them. Sure enough. This feeling, these 3 pots of flowers gave people an extra sense of comfort. He asked the servant who spoke earlier, "Can you still find the person who sold the flowers?" The servant shook his head respectfully. "I just happened to see him when I was shopping." Later, third young miss liked the 3 pots of flowers very much. She ordered me to go to the market to see if I could buy other flowers, but I never saw the flower seller again. The purple-robed man who was called young Master Qi frowned. Li Jun finally found a chance to speak. He asked, "Young Master Qi, is there anything special about these flowers?" The purple-robed man looked sideways at him and said, "I liked them at first sight. It's probably fate." Li Jun, if he believed this, there would be something wrong with his brain. However, he felt that he did not have the guts to say this out loud. He did not even dare to show that he was still puzzled. At this moment, a servant in green suddenly came in from outside the corner door. The purple-robed man's eyes were instantly attracted. The reason was none other than the fact that the green-clothed servant was actually holding an extremely exquisite white flower pot, and within the flower pot was a blooming 18 scholar. Although Li Jun did not like flowers, he had heard a little about the famous camellia of the 18 scholars. Moreover, judging from the appearance of this 18 scholar, it was definitely the best of the best. He asked in surprise, "Madam went to buy camellias again?" Many people in Yin County knew that the old madam of the Li family liked camellias. The servant in green bowed to the 2 and then said, "No, just now a merchant came in and said that he wanted to give this pot of flowers to the old madam. I saw that this flower was not ordinary, so I took it and prepared to go see the old madam. Let her take a look." The purple-robed man's face lit up when he heard this. He said, "Bring that person to me." The green-robed servant looked at Li Jun hesitantly. Li Jun quickly said, "Didn't you hear what young Master Qi said? Go and invite that person over here." As he spoke, he asked the person behind him to carefully take the camellia. "Young Master Qi, why don't we go to the tea house over there and sit for a while?" he asked. Chapter 1945. After Zhang Zhenxing handed the flowers to the Li residence's servant, he quietly waited for the person inside to summon him. He was very confident that the things he presented would be able to please the old madam of the Li residence. However, wasn't this speed a little too fast? Zhang Zhenxing was a little puzzled as he looked at the Li residence's servant who was so polite to him. When they met for the first time, although there was no problem with the other party's etiquette, when he spoke, the hidden arrogance between the lines was clearly seen by him. Although Zhang Zhenxing didn't understand what was there to be proud of as a servant who wasn't even free, he still had a respectful attitude on the surface. Zhang Zhenxing felt that something unexpected must have happened. Otherwise, there was no way to explain the strong change in the servant's attitude. He was directly brought to a pavilion. Zhang Zhenxing stood quietly with his head down and didn't look around. This 18 scholar and these pots of roses were all planted by you? A young male voice came from above. Zhang Zhenxing heard the voice and raised his head. The moment he saw the person sitting opposite him, his face froze for a moment. Zhang Zhenxing had never seen such a noble person, whether it was a man or a woman. He had only heard that the Li family was a big family that had been around for generations. Could it be that this was the background of an aristocratic family? He stopped his wild thoughts and said with a neither humble nor arrogant attitude, "This commoner sold these flowers. They were planted by this commoner's daughter." Oh. The purple-robed man didn't know why, but when he heard this, his heart suddenly beat quickly. He wanted to see the person who planted these pots of flowers. However, on the surface, he just said lightly, "I like the flowers you planted very much." Zhang Zhenxing couldn't figure out who this person was, but looking at him, he definitely wasn't a nobody. He could only bow to show his gratitude. After young Master Qi said this, he didn't say anything. Seeing this, Li Jun asked Zhang Zhenxing, "I heard that you came to offer this pot of flowers to my grandmother. Is that true?" Zhang Zhenxing was stunned and realized that this was the young master of the Li family. He hurriedly said, "Yes, this commoner wants to come to Yun County to do a small flower business. It just so happens that my family has the best 18 scholar flower. I heard that the old lady of the Li family in Yun County loves this flower the most. This commoner thinks that such an elegant flower would be like a cow chewing on a peony in my hands. I might as well give it to someone who truly understands flowers." How could Li Jun not understand the hidden meaning in his words? He just wanted to win this pot of flower in exchange for the Li family's protection. He was more interested in something else. "You speak in such a logical manner. Are you a scholar?" Zhang Zhenxing shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I only went to private school for a few years when I was young. I don't have any scholarly achievements. How can I be considered a scholar?" Li Jun smiled. "I think you are much smarter than many scholars." He had a good impression of Zhang Zhenxing, so he immediately ordered people to bring flowers and bring him to see the old mistress. Grandmother would definitely like it. As for this merchant, it would depend on how lucky he was. The purple-robed man casually glanced at the 18 scholar tree. No one could see the trace of pity in his eyes. Zhang Zhenxing's trip was quite successful. When old Mistress Li saw the camellia, she was very happy. She even had someone wrap a red envelope for him. The county magistrate was also very happy to receive the orchid. In short, if he wanted to open a flower shop in Yin County, there probably wouldn't be any blind people who would come looking for trouble. Chapter 1946. He returned to the town in a good mood. However, he did not know that someone was secretly following him. Gu Xingyin was at home. When she heard the noise outside, she was happy for a moment. Then, she suddenly became cold. "Jojo." Zhang Zhenxing opened the door and saw his daughter's smiling face. Gu Xingyin said, "From the looks of it, father, things must have gone very smoothly today." Zhang Zhenxing nodded. "Old Madam Li and the county magistrate were very satisfied with the gifts you sent. I think we won't be bullied in Yin County." Gu Xingyin smiled and nodded. Zhang Zhenxing looked at his daughter's yard, which was full of flowers and plants. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. "My Jojo has learned a great skill. You are much better than me," he said, "Father, I have thought about it. I will take out all my savings over the years and buy a shop in Yin County. If this flower shop is done well, it will make more money than our family's clothing shop. However, my Jojo will have to work a lot harder," Zhang Zhenxing said with a little heartache. He originally thought that he would pamper and protect his only precious daughter. When his daughter grew up, he would choose a good husband for her. After all, Jojo would not have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of her life. He did not expect that he would still have to work hard to take care of the flowers and plants. Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I only water them and move them a little every day. There are not many of them, so it is not tiring." She was telling the truth. The flowers she raised would not even give birth to insects, let alone die. It was really convenient. Zhang Zhenxing wanted to say something, but Gu Xingyin said to him, "Father, you have worked hard today. Go and rest early. If there is anything else, we can talk about it tomorrow." Zhang Zhenxing smiled helplessly, but his heart was very warm. He went back to his room. After her father went back to his room, Gu Xingyin closed the door to her yard. She turned and walked into her room. Unexpectedly, she bumped into a wall of people. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She quickly took a step back and covered her forehead as she stared at the person in front of her. The man in the purple robe was handsome, and he was sizing her up with a burning gaze. "Who are you?" Gu Xingyin put down her hand that was covering her forehead. The purple-robed man saw that there was a red patch on her fair forehead. "What a delicate girl," he thought to himself. He answered her question subconsciously, "My name is Qi Qingxian." Qi Qingxian? Instantly, the system transmitted the relevant information into Gu Xingyin's mind. She frowned and looked at him. "I don't care who you are. What are you trying to do by trespassing on private property at this time?" Qi Qingxian raised his eyebrows and looked at her. "You don't seem to be surprised that I suddenly appeared in your yard, nor are you afraid of me?" As he spoke, the tip of his nose took a deep breath without leaving a trace. The light and elegant fragrance entered his body along with his breath. His restless heart seemed to have been gently comforted by a gentle hand, and miraculously calmed down. This feeling was really good. His entire temperament softened at this moment. Gu Xingyin looked at him and suddenly said, "Do you have a fever in your body?" Qi Qingshuan's eyes turned cold, and he stared at Gu Xingyin sharply. "Who are you?" She was not surprised or afraid to see him, and she could see the hidden disease in his body at a glance. She could even plant the flower that could relieve his fever. How could such a woman be the daughter of an ordinary businessman? Chapter 7. I don't know why, but recently, I can only get to Chapter 7 at 10 o'clock. Every night, I get stuck. This is simply terrible. See you later. I will slowly draw the next chapter card. Chapter 1947. Gu Xingyin met his cold eyes, but her expression did not change at all. "As you can see, I'm just an ordinary merchant's daughter. I know how to grow flowers and know a little bit about the art of Qi Huang," Gu Xingyin said lightly. However, in the next moment, she found that the man who was 3 steps away from her had already come to her. Her chin was pinched by the man and lifted up. She was forced to look straight at Qi Qingxian. Qi Qingshuan's initial irritation was suddenly stunned when he met Gu Xingyin's clear eyes. The uncontrollable flames that were rising up seemed to have been poured down by something clear. Before they could erupt, the tiny spark was mercilessly extinguished. He seemed to have thought of something and suddenly lowered his head. Gu Xingyin's breath stopped. The man's breath intruded into her territory domineeringly, with his exclusive scorching heat and no mercy. Compared to her nervousness, Qi Qingshuan's expression could be said to be one of enjoyment. He lowered his head at her neck, but he did not really touch her skin. Such an action, if seen by an outsider who did not know, would probably think that this was a young couple with deep friendship. Gu Xingyin suddenly reacted. Her face blushed and she was about to push him away. Qi Qingxian obediently took a step back and left her side. Gu Xingyin glanced at him coldly. When she was about to say something, the man spoke first. Before I was born, my mother was poisoned. Gu Xingyin's eyelids trembled. The words that she was about to blurt out were forcibly swallowed back. She quietly listened to the man speak. When Qi Qingxian spoke of this, his face was emotionless, as if he was not talking about himself. Although it was discovered in time, she still hurt her body. Later, when she gave birth to me, she did not make it and passed away. As for me, although I survived, I carried the heat poison from my mother's womb. Gu Xingyin looked up at him. Qi Qingxian said, I've never let anyone know about this except for the doctors we've been honoring in our family. Now, can you tell me how you know about this? Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes and said softly, Of course I can tell. These words sounded very perfunctory, but it made Qi Qingxian laugh. There are so many doctors in the world, including the imperial doctors in the palace, who couldn't diagnose the illness, but you can see it at a glance. Qi Qingxian is impressed. As he said this, he suddenly looked expectantly at Gu Xingyin, then, Can I hope that miss can cure my fever? Gu Xingyin did not answer. Instead, she asked, Why are you so confident in me? Qi Qingxian smiled and said, It's probably because you have a special aura. As long as I get close to you, the heat poison that has been raging in my body will retreat. It wasn't just her. Even the flowers she raised more or less carried that kind of feeling. This was also the reason why he was so excited when he saw the pink rose. Gu Xingyin took 2 steps back, sat down and poured herself a cup of tea. I can cure you, she said frankly. Then, under the man's bright eyes, she said slowly, But, why should I save you? 8th update. A new announcement, starting from the early morning of the 23rd of this month and ending at 24:00 o'clock on the 7th of May next month. There will be a double monthly ticket promotion on the website. Well, it means to cast a monthly ticket, which is equivalent to 2 tickets. If you have a monthly ticket, please remember to vote for Gao Lingji. Tomorrow. After the early morning. Double. Please, ticket, ticket.